Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled People Stories. Today we have a very special episode for you, a compilation of some of the best entitled people stories we've read over the past year. So sit back, relax, and enjoy a few hours of the most entitled people you've ever heard of. And by the way, Karen assured me that for every thumbs up this video gets, she won't try to get anyone fired for an entire week. So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. My pregnant daughter demands I raise her baby for her. Hello, I am a 56-year-old mother to 33-year-old Kelly and grandmother to 16-year-old Opal. Kelly became pregnant with Opal at 16. My husband, Eddie, and I have always believed in having the right to choose. However, Kelly insisted that she wanted to keep the baby and not give her up for adoption. We helped a lot as Kelly was only 17 when Opal was born. However, Kelly would rarely help with parenting even when she was available. Even asking her to watch Opal for an hour while we ran errands was an issue. It was rare that Kelly wouldn't complain about why she had to be there to look after Opal. Kelly chose not to attend college after graduation. She had a job with a flexible schedule, yet she rarely made herself available for Opal. Kelly was only home to sleep or get dressed for some party. She also relied on us to purchase supplies and book appointments for Opal. Eddie and I would have serious talks with Kelly that she needed to step up as a parent. Kelly would only make empty promises and never follow through on them. Kelly moved out when Opal was 6. Kelly comes around maybe once a fortnight and for holidays, but Eddie and I have been the ones to raise Opal. Opal is doing extremely well. She has good friends, plays tennis, participates in volunteer projects, and plans to be a marine biologist after graduation. The school year ended for Opal last week, so we had a nice dinner to celebrate her good grades. Kelly came, along with several other family members. We were all chatting and enjoying dinner together when Kelly stood up to make an announcement. She announced to us that she was pregnant with her boyfriend's kid. We already were upset because this was supposed to be Opal's special moment, and Kelly announcing her pregnancy was completely inappropriate. Eddie and I said nothing, and Kelly started to say how she and her boyfriend were so busy with life right now. Eddie and I interrupted Kelly and told her we would have nothing to do with raising this new baby and would not be providing anything for it, supplies, childcare, etc. Kelly flipped out and an argument ensued. Kelly called us heartless and claimed that we were willing to throw our grandkid away. Eddie and I called her selfish for expecting us to raise another kid. We're too old to raise a baby. Kelly is 33 and needs to grow up. Give the baby up for adoption or be a parent and raise it yourself. Kelly left in tears. Now the family has broken into sides. The ones agreeing with Kelly say that we adopted Opal and are sending a message that we don't care about our newest grandbaby. Others are saying we should have taken her aside privately instead of shooting her down in front of everyone, and our reaction was cruel. Eddie and I feel we had to be blunt with Kelly and not sugarcoat reality. Opal likes to show us stories from here sometimes, so I thought it would be a good place to ask for a neutral perspective. Am I the jerk? Edit. Opal is always able to express her feelings with me or Eddie. Opal also has a therapist who is available to speak whenever she needs it. Opal visited the therapist weekly during middle school, but now hasn't needed to see him for more than once a month. We will be taking Opal on a mall trip to make up for what happened at the celebration dinner. We spoke privately to Opal after this incident, and she knows we in no way view her as a burden. Our granddaughter is a blessing, and many of our happiest moments involved supporting Opal and watching her grow up. But Opal is 16. She doesn't need the kind of constant attention and care that a newborn baby does. We are now too old to be able to adequately raise a newborn baby, even if we wanted to. The biggest problem is that Kelly is now an adult and needs to start acting like one. Kelly is supposed to outlive us. The reality is that Eddie and I aren't going to be around for her or her kids' entire lives. It's why Kelly needs to accept that she cannot expect us to take on her responsibilities and she must be independent. Edit 2. Several people have informed me that the part where Kelly expected us to raise the baby was unclear, so I apologized for that. I thought it was self-explanatory, but realized none of you actually experienced what happened. Kelly talked about how busy she and her boyfriend were with their lives, then began to talk about how grateful she was that we would always look after our grandkids, and how since we had gained so much joy from raising Opal, we would be even happier raising this second baby. After Eddie and I called her out, Kelly confirmed that she had expected us to adopt and raise this second baby as well. Kelly said how she and her boyfriend did not have time to raise a baby, but that putting up the baby for adoption would be throwing it away. She assumed we, at almost 60 years old, would have no trouble or opposition raising a newborn baby. I think you're not the jerk. Kelly is a deadbeat mother. How does Opal feel about this? Opal was pushed aside by her own mother and ignored, and now her mom is going out and starting a new family with another guy. But what happened to Opal and her mother's relationship? It's non-existent. Kelly is a deadbeat, a nobody. I'm sorry, I know she's your daughter, but it's true. She's a horrible person. You were blunt with Kelly. Good. She deserves a kick in the behind. It was terrible for her to announce at her daughter's graduation party. Kelly is selfish, so it's only fair you give her the same horrible treatment back and call her out in front of everyone there. I hope nothing but the best for Opal. Your daughter has already completely disregarded Opal, making her, good news, I have a baby now, announcement at the end of the school year party for Opal is some more grade A trash behavior. It's not a graduation party, is it? Because that would make it even worse behavior on Kelly's part. You may not have let them know in the most civil way possible, but I'm gonna say not the jerk because of how thoroughly Kelly has made it clear her daughter doesn't matter. You may have eventually raised her enough to call it adoption, but that was never the original intent, so Kelly can buzz off. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Kelly? Please let us know. I'll never understand why deadbeats who don't want to take care of their kids keep having them. I went from school teacher to chairman of the board of a big company for the sake of revenge. When I was a tiny kid, my father was my best friend. He worked multiple jobs to support my family, all while powering his way through law school. He even built a couple of small businesses from the ground up with a couple of his friends. All while doing this, he managed to be the best dad ever, spending as much time as he could with my mother, myself, and my baby siblings. One day, we found out that he had stage 4 stomach cancer, the kind that you don't recover from. My mother and I stayed by his side all the way till it was all over. The last memory I have of my father was when he was completely immobile, practically a vegetable at this point, with tubes going in and out of his body, and me just praying that he'd still be able to remember who I was. All the guy could do was smile at me, just to let me know he still recognized his son, even if the doctor told us most of his memories would be gone. Eventually, he fell into a coma for some days before waking up to say goodbye to my mother, who was by his side when he passed. She was a housewife, so we really didn't have much to go on after his passing. Enter my grandfather. He was one of those self-centered boomer types who makes everything about himself. After my father passed, he'd used the newspaper obituary to boast about my dad's grades and achievements, which I realized seemed to be the only thing my dad was to him. Just in case you were wondering, yes, we are Asian. My mother was grieving and trying to find a way to make ends meet, and my grandfather graciously offered to help her control my father's 2 businesses to help support us. My mother agreed because she didn't have any experience. While we grew up, the 2 businesses didn't provide much for us, likely because my father was one of the big reasons they were thriving. Mom was in and out of multiple jobs just to keep us floating. My grandfather offered to help put me and my siblings through school. I managed to score some scholarships with some good grades growing up, so thankfully he didn't have to do as much for me, but we were really glad that he helped out with my siblings. After I made it out of school, I found out that my family was broke and my 2 siblings were still making their way through medical school. My sister even offered to stop and just get a job, but I told her to keep going because she was doing so well and that she deserved to graduate. My grandparents had cut us off because they didn't approve of the directions my siblings took in life, especially my sister, who was, for them, not supposed to have a career in medicine. My grandmother's a real jerk. Why are you wasting your time and money becoming a doctor? You're just going to have kids and quit. I was working as a high school teacher when I was contacted by one of my dad's old business partners for one of his companies. After I asked him about how the company was doing, he told me that my grandfather, who was still in control of my father's shares, was siphoning money from the company for himself, and he was earning way more than he was giving me and my siblings for our education. So all our lives, he had been making us feel indebted to him for money that was supposed to be ours to begin with, and he lied to us, telling us that Dad's companies weren't making any money for us at all. We also realized that when he cut us off, he was cutting us off from our own money, forcing my siblings to drop out and give up careers that they had been working their whole lives for. What's worse is that this was our father's money, and we knew that he had wanted it to help us provide for our futures, even after he passed, and here comes his jerk father, basically crapping on his legacy for his own enrichment. I even found out that he used his position to take possession of the company's office space and force them to set up shop in a smaller, cheaper office while renting the original space out under his own name to the company's competitors to make money from them too, all while I had to work multiple jobs to help my mother and siblings pay the bills. Cue revenge. My grandfather's biggest weakness has always been his pride. In fact, I suspect that he wanted us to think he was helping support us out of his own pocket because he wanted everyone to think he was some kind of hero, when in reality, he was financially choking us. I recognize that no matter what my grandfather said, my siblings, my mother, and I were legally the owners of my father's company shares. So after having a statement signed by 3 of them, I approached all the board of directors, sans my grandfather, and let them know that I was now the sole representative of my late dad's estate. My grandfather also made himself chairman of the board. According to the company records, he did no work for the company at all, so the position was just a name that allowed him to receive money. So I convinced them that since he was only chairman as representative of my father's estate, that made me the chairman. I did not intend to keep the position because I did not have the experience for it. Then I contacted other members of my extended family about my grandfather's unethical practices with the company's office space. He was eventually pressured by them into evicting the company's main competitor from their office space. Serves them right for conniving with my grandfather to take the company's old office space. At the next board meeting, I prepared for the moment I'd been waiting my entire life for. When he entered the conference room to preside over the meeting as the chairman, he found his chair facing away from the table with all the board members already seated at the table. And like a Bond villain, I spun the chair around to reveal to him that I'd been the one sitting there the entire meeting. I told him that the company and my family no longer needed him, and that I'd be taking control over representation of my father's estate. "Do you know that I'm the one who put him and his siblings through school?" he said in shock. I only went, "No, Dad did." The look of sheer embarrassment on his face was perfect. I've never seen him look defeated my entire life until that moment, and this sort of satisfaction could not be achieved by simply ratting him out. I stepped down from the chairman position and took a job in the company's treasury department as a bookkeeper with a meager salary. But at least now, any profit sharing or dividends that the company released would go where my father wanted it to go. And finally, one of the first decisions I got to make as a board member before stepping down was to give my mother a permanent job that she deserved. My grandfather is now jobless. He spends all his time at home, and because he spent his life being selfish and self-centered, he has no friends. All he had going for him was being able to power trip over other people and boasting about his assets and achievements. Even my grandmother has had it with him, and the two don't even sleep in the same room anymore. I hope he lives the rest of his short life regretting that he didn't live his life with more compassion and humility. Edit. I've gotten a lot of comments about the legality of what went on. During all this, the only lawyer working in the company was my grandfather, and we all know he never did anything. When we hired a team of actual helpful lawyers, they told us exactly the same things you guys pointed out. They're still trying to clean everything up so we don't get into big trouble. Update. Apparently, my sister saw this post and just informed me that he's kinda miserable now because his wife is angry at him because he siphoned what's left of their money to an extramarital sugar baby he had and probably another attempt at getting someone to affirm and glorify him. I guess he hasn't learned. Am I the jerk for pulling my horse from public lessons? I, 16 female, own a lovely dapple gray mare, Mustang. She's 22 and getting older, but still has tons of spunk and energy. While I was in school, I allowed the place I board at to use her for lessons in return for halved board fee. I'm only 16 and I couldn't ride her much. She did great with it, and she mostly helped out beginner riders and newcomers, leaving the more advanced things to me. Now that school is out for the summer, I was thinking of pulling her, but didn't since I knew they'd need all hands on deck for this summer camp I volunteered to do. Literally free of charge for babysitting and letting them use my horse from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. We usually just walk the horses on the trail and escort the newer kids, which is fine and easy. The issue arises when an older kid, let's call him Leo, starts riding. His family owns a barn, and he's been gearing up to ride his own horse, assuring me that he can tack up my horse just fine, despite not riding English pretty much ever. I oblige, trusting him, and go to help out with the craft table since all heck has broken loose. I end up hearing my horse was acting up on the trail and for trotting, which never happens unless she's in heat. I figured she was just having a bad day, but after untacking her, I was practically livid. Her girth was incredibly tight and on a way higher setting than I usually do. She was snippy and clearly uncomfortable. I just gave her a rest day and followed Leo out when he was riding again the next day. As Leo is riding around in the arena, he's incredibly heavy-handed, even after I tell him to stop. He doesn't post at the trot and keeps kicking even when unnecessary. He keeps tightening the girth up too high and will not listening to me. I'm fuming at this point and pull him off the horse, explaining that my mare is fine and he's using too much force. He just kinda nods and goes to untack her, but I keep having to follow behind him to fix the things he messes up. Apparently, he talked to his mother about it, and the barn owner had a chat with me in the tack room about how I need to be more gentle on the campers and that she's allowing my horse to participate out of the kindness of her heart. It felt horrible, but I really felt like I was in the right. So I told her, in a fit of rage, which was not my best moment, that my mare would be going back to private riding and would be pulled from lessons. I backed out of the camp as well and only help every now and then. My barn friends are livid since they're now one horse and one counselor short, and I do feel bad for just some petty thing. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Sounds to me like you aren't taking issue with campers or inexperienced riders, you're taking issue with someone who is deliberately ignoring your instructions on how to treat your horse. I don't know anything about horses, but I do know that a big part of learning to work with animals is accepting that they are all different and you need to tailor your treatment of them based on their personalities and preferences. If the program doesn't support and understand your concern, it's probably best to pull your horse from public riding. I would like to add that horse people are never your friends. In my 16 plus years of experience, I came to the conclusion that 99% are potential jerks. Another per diem tale. Not mine, but a friend's. He's a heavy equipment operator for a company that builds temporary roads for power line, logging, pipeline jobs, that sort of thing. The crew meets up at the yard and travels out to the job site for the first day of the job. They're given a per diem for hotel accommodations for remote jobs, but my friend has a short school bus that he's converted into a camper, so he pockets the per diem. He sleeps in the camper and cooks his own food rather than eat in the restaurant. He gets along well with the rest of the crew and is able to use their rented rooms for showers and such. These guys were local to the yard. Some would get their spouse to drop them off, and one guy would ride his bicycle in. As time went on, the company depended on him to transport a handful of crew members from the yard to the site, from the site back to the hotel, and the next morning from the hotel to the site. His converted bus still had a row of seats, so 4 people sat there and another in the passenger seat with their luggage piled in the back. Some jerk administrator chewed him out for pocketing the per diem and sleeping in the camper and told him that he must rent a hotel room if he was to receive the per diem. So the next job. He shows up at the yard in his Honda Civic. They have their meeting and it's time to roll, except that the Civic has his gear and his luggage in the back with the seats folded down. There's no room and there's 5 guys standing there with no transportation. Foreman asks him what's going on, and my buddy explains that since he's been told not to stay in the camper, he doesn't see any reason to pay the extra gas to drive it to the site. The foreman finds out which penny pincher lit my friend up and calls the project manager and asks him exactly how Mr. Pennypincher plans to cover the costs of getting the crew to the job site. Project manager authorizes foreman to go and rent an SUV and then blasts Mr. Pennypincher. The SUV is a couple of $100 a day, plus mileage. The crew is late to the first day on the job, but that wasn't the big problem. This is a construction job in the boonies, and the crew that piled into the SUV daily were filthy. When they returned the rental SUV, they were hit with an exorbitant cleaning fee. The next job, foreman told my friend that he was now okay to sleep in his camper and pocket the per diem. My friend said that he rather liked staying in the hotel room. He was fine with it, but since he was saving the company the cost of the rental SUV, if they bumped his per diem up, he'd be happy to chauffeur the crew. They did. Sure, I'll take your pennies. I was working at a gas station about 20 years ago. One evening, this lady comes in, dumps like 5 or 6 handfuls of pennies on the counter, and states her preferred brand. Ordinarily, our cashiers would just tell someone to buzz off if they were trying to do this, But I was pretty chill at the time, and I had nothing to do but run the register and stuff my face with food from the deli. So, cue malicious compliance. I just said, okay, but I'll have to take other customers. I'll count this between. She objects. It's all there. I counted it already. I reply, if my drawer comes up wrong, I'll get in trouble. I have to count it. Sorry. She starts stomping around the store, all mad, throwing her arms around, etc. I would later come to recognize this as behavior of someone who's on something. And I start counting, meticulously setting the pennies aside in stacks of 10 and pausing every time a customer comes in. All the while, this lady is acting like she's been hurt. Maybe half a dozen customers, and 10 minutes later, I'm nearing the end of the pile. She's still standing by the door, getting more and more impatient, complaining at everyone who comes through. I was giving the other customers priority, so they didn't care, of course. Anyway, I finished counting and she's short, maybe 15 cents. Who could remember? It was fairly common for people to raid the penny dish to cover the cost of a pack of cigarettes they couldn't quite afford. And this was generally allowed. Small town, and after all, who even cares? But she promised me it was all there, and I got a bit bugged about it. So I take the overflowing free penny dish and move it behind the counter before calling her over. You're X cents short. Can't I just cover it from the dish? Where is it? What dish? There's a dish. There's always a dish. You took it away. I give her a puzzled look, wave my hands over the counter. There's no dish. I don't know what you're talking about. She is incensed and loses it on me for a while. I just shrug it off. She left without her cigarettes, of course. My boss came over afterward and told me I didn't have to count those or even take them. Dude did not get me at all, but I just played it straight and was like, oh, okay. Weekend warriors. About 10 years ago, I worked for a local company that sold power equipment. Most of our clients were landscapers and contractors who either bought or had equipment repaired regularly. We knew all of our regulars. It was a great place to work, partly because the owner and our manager had a zero-tolerance policy for customers and clients who were jerks towards employees. They supported us, trained us well, and didn't gaslight us when we had to deal with jerks. For the most part, our regulars were great, but the weekend warrior, do-it-yourself guys were terrible. Most of them had more money than sense and did not need anything we sold for their home projects. One summer, we had hired a young woman to help on the sales floor on the weekend. She was still in college and kind of lacked in confidence. She was great. She had an agricultural background. She just didn't know our products yet. One Saturday morning, she got stuck with a weekend warrior who wanted to buy a lawnmower. He was looking at something ridiculous, a commercial-grade, zero-turn hustler with a 54-inch deck. He was not mowing acreage. He did not have a farm. He lived in the suburbs. She took him outside to look at some of the mowers, and before long, we could hear him yelling. The manager hurried outside. I was working on a special order when she came back into the store, trying not to angry cry. The owner told her to take a break. The manager finished the sale, and the man then had to go somewhere else to buy a trailer to haul it home because he hadn't planned for that part. When the dust had settled, I asked the manager what happened. He said the man started yelling and calling her names because she didn't know how to turn on the mower and had offered to go get someone else. The fact that he was asking the question indicated he also did not know how to turn on the mower. I'm no longer shocked at the number of people who will drop thousands of dollars on things they don't know how to use. Later that day, the owner came over to me, sighed heavily, and told me the guy had called, demanding we mail him a copy of the manual because he didn't get one. All of the manuals and links to repairs and parts for all of these products we sold were on our website. But no, he wanted a hard copy because he had already been insulted enough and shouldn't have to find it himself. When I brought up the manual, it was 90 pages long, 45 pages in English, 45 pages in Spanish. I printed off the Spanish copy and left it for the mailman. I told the owner what I did when I arrived at work the next day. He just started laughing. When the guy called in to complain, the owner apologized and told him a lot of our clients speak Spanish, so we didn't want to assume people only spoke English. The guy returned the mower. We're pretty sure he couldn't figure out how to get it off the trailer. We sold it a week later to a landscaping company. Am I the jerk for throwing all of my mother-in-law's things out of my bedroom? My mother-in-law moved in with me, female 25, and my husband, male 26, a week ago, while her house is being renovated. The renovations were being done on the second floor, so she had no reason to leave the house, but she said the noise makes her anxious. She didn't go to stay with any of her sons, who have larger homes, but came to stay with us in our one-bedroom apartment. My husband brought her in without even telling me. She brought about 4 huge bags with her and asked if she could put some of her things in my bedroom. I said absolutely and gave all the sock drawers to keep her things in, though I wasn't feeling comfortable with her barging in all the time and invading my privacy just to grab something of hers. She started complaining about lack of storage to put her dresses and makeup in and asked if I could share my closet with her, but I said no for many reasons. One of them is because I need privacy, and my closet is where I keep all my personal things. She huffed and puffed, but dropped it eventually. I went to work and got home at 8. I entered my bedroom and noticed something strange. I opened my closet and all of my things were gone. Her things, like dresses and blouses, were hanging on or folded on the side. I was so confused, I immediately asked her about it, and she stood near the door and nonchalantly said she borrowed my closet to store her expensive things, since keeping them in bags or in the sock drawers was causing damage. I furiously asked where all my things were. She pointed at a different cabinet in the living room and said all my clothes were there, and as for makeup, jewels were at the bottom of the kitchen cabinet. I lost it completely. I grabbed all her clothes that were inside my closet and threw them out of my bedroom. She starts yelling and then started looking for her phone to call my husband. I told her that I shouldn't be basically kicked out of my own space and told her to take her things and leave. My husband came over and started yelling at me, saying I was way out of line. He told me that all his mom asked me was to share, but I was being petty for no reason. I told him it's my room, and he lashed back, saying it was his room too, and I was being ridiculous. He then went off on me for telling her to leave, but I took my stuff and went to stay with my mom. He tried to speak to me, saying it was me who caused this fight, and saying that he already told me this is all just temporary till his mom's house is done being renovated. He said my reaction was wrong and made his mom upset. He asked me to let it go and get right with his mom and reach a compromise. Am I the jerk for how I reacted? Not the jerk. Stay at your mom's until your mother-in-law is out, and you need to think long and hard about counseling or divorce. Mama's boys are not good husbands or fathers. Do not even consider having kids with this man. This is a big, major husband problem. Not the jerk. First off, your husband brings her in without checking with you. Then when she takes over your space, he sides with her. Do you have anywhere else you can go or someone else you can stay with? If your husband is this devoted to his mom, he can have her keep him company instead of you. I'm so sorry you're going through this. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know.
He sounds like even more of a mama's boy than you, Reddit boy.
Play stupid games at work, win stupid prizes. Early last year, I started working as a contractor supporting one of the many government agencies here in the US. My job description was pretty simple. Act as administrative support for a particular federal employee. In effect, I'm a glorified secretary. I push papers, schedule and file things, and act as a gopher when necessary. The job wasn't particularly difficult, but it really helped that the Fed and I got along like a house on fire. The problem is, the Fed I work for doesn't get along with another Fed who works in the same office. Their job descriptions have nothing to do with each other, and there is really very little need for them to interact with each other. But for some reason, which I still don't know, there was bad blood between them. Cue the lockdown. Our office went from a steady workload to a maximum telework position, and just like that, there was no work for the contractors to do. No more pushing papers, no more scheduling or filing things, and no more acting as a gopher. Just long days sitting in my cubicle reading Reddit on my phone. The Fed I support decides that we'll take the opportunity to clean out 2 offices in another building that haven't been used for years so they can be repurposed. They'd sat idle for years because no one wanted to clean them. These rooms are filthy with electronics that were old in the 90s, old break room food, cables everywhere, the works. As we get started, I'm happy to be there as cleaning these rooms means I finally have something to do. Better yet, the Fed I worked for was right there with me, elbow deep in garbage. After the first day, we've made solid progress on one of the rooms, but it took 8 hours of hard labor to get there. I go back to my cubicle to gather my things to go home and find the other Fed waiting for me.
Where have you been all day?
I've been in the other building helping my Fed clean out a room.
That's not in your job description. You don't need to be helping this person do that.
I really don't mind. It's better than sitting around on the government's dime doing nothing. And besides, my job is to support this person. If they want me to help them clean out a room, I'm more than happy to help.
No, you can't be doing that. If it's not in your job description, then it's not your job. This Fed should know better than to take advantage of your good nature and make you do work that you weren't hired for.
I'm sorry, you're going to have to take this up with my Fed. As far as I know, my job is to support this person in whatever way they need, including physical labor.
We'll see about that.
The next day, my Fed and I go back to the other building to work. We're 10 minutes into cleaning when the other Fed shows up with a member of the union in tow. The Fed then rips into my Fed for forcing me to do work outside of the scope of my duties and brought the union representative to back up this opinion. The funny thing was, the union rep had no idea what he was doing there. Neither my Fed nor I are members of the union, and his opinion really had nothing to do with the situation. The other Fed brought him in to use as a prop. To his credit, he seemed to know that, because he just gave us an uncomfortable shrug with a look like, I have no idea why I'm here either, and said nothing at all. Rather than fight about it, my Fed surrenders gracefully, and the two of us reluctantly leave the unclean rooms behind. A week later, I was sent home after guidance came down from Washington saying that since there was no work being done, contractors were no longer needed to support the Feds on staff until lockdown ended. I sat home for about a day before getting a call from my company telling me another division needed me. This would be a permanent change of office, and as long as I didn't mind the risk of getting sick, I could start immediately. Fast forward several months to November. I'm happily working away in my new office when the Fed who had a problem with my helping clean the rooms comes in to speak with some of the employees in my new office. This person is absolutely livid because the two rooms had finally been reassigned but still needed to be cleaned before they could be turned over to their new owners. This Fed was called into work specifically to clean the rooms, despite still being on maximum telework status, because there was no one else they could call. All of the contractors who had supported them had already been reassigned, and there was nothing in this person's job description that said that they could be assigned this particular duty. Apparently, it took almost 2 weeks of back-breaking labor to clean out the rooms until they were good enough to transfer. The best part was, this person seems to have completely forgotten what part I had to play in this little drama, because when they came to my office to complain about the injustice of it all to anyone who would listen, they stood right in front of my desk to do so. I got to hear every word of the story right from this horse's mouth. Entitled sister stole my iPhone. Big mistake. So this just happened this morning. I'm 17, male, and my sister, who's 19, is going to a concert with her boyfriend in August. She asked our parents to buy plane tickets for them, but they refused because they already gave her a lot of money every month that she wastes. For my birthday, they got me an iPhone 13 Pro. She got angry and called them jerks for refusing to buy the plane tickets for her while giving me an expensive gift. I told her the best thing our parents bought me before this iPhone was a book that I didn't even want, and they always forgot about my birthday, even if I talked about it for months before. I reminded her that she always got anything that she asked for, regardless if it was her birthday. Expensive clothes, toys, phones, perfume, makeup, and even a car for her 16th birthday. And they still give her a monthly allowance, which they have never gave me. She picked up the box and left. I sat there in shock because I couldn't believe what she was doing. My parents kept yelling at her to come back, but she ignored them and just drove away. I've been calling and texting her nonstop to give me the phone back. She texted back, telling me to keep dreaming, and blocked my number. I informed my parents I was going to call the cops on her, but they told me not to do it because they'll get me a new one. The only reason they started treating me nicely and getting me a birthday gift is because after she left for college, they found out they had another kid in the house that they're supposed to care for and love. Even the phone I currently have, I bought after working all summer last year because they always refused to buy me one no matter how cheap it was. My sister got one when she was 11. Even though my parents didn't like what she did, they still looked for reasons to excuse her behavior, like saying that she was probably just stressed after her exams and how she's been looking forward to going to this concert. They even started blaming themselves for refusing to buy the plane tickets in the first place. I really want to call the cops on her despite their refusal, because who says she isn't going to steal from me in the future? Not the jerk. Your sister and your parents need a real wake-up call. Call the cops. They all deserve it. OP is 17. His parents bought the phone and presumably pay the monthly bill, so I'd think that legally the phone belongs to his parents, so they would be the ones who could really press charges against the sister for stealing the phone. I'm not a lawyer though. Gifts are considered the property of the receiver no matter who bought it. My son's phone was stolen by a now former friend of his. He called the cops, they got it back. You wouldn't be the jerk, but you need to play the long game here. If your sister gets a theft charge against her, it might, depending on circumstances, jeopardize her college place, and she'll end up back at home with you where you have to deal with her every day. Plus, you'll have to deal with the fallout from your parents. Instead, I'd wait until your parents get you a new phone, and then call the phone company and get the one she stole locked, so it's absolutely no use to her. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you call the cops on your sister or not? Please let us know.
A thief is a thief. I would have done Ben called the cops, bruh.
Harass me about my gardens? Okay, we can do this the hard way. My house is surrounded by 2 gardens, one in the front facing the street and one in the back bordering my neighbor's gardens. When my parents and grandparents moved into our house 26 years ago, they planted a thick hedge around the entire property. They also installed a rosa arch over the pathway to our front door, and my grandfather was always busy keeping up the garden, planting, weeding, keeping everything very tidy. My grandfather passed in 2002, and after that, the garden was neglected for a few years as my parents were still working and my brother and I were in university and school. But then, around 2005, my mom read something that we should plant stuff to help the bees, and she took over the gardens, planting lilac, rhododendron, roses, and various berries. Later, we decided to also install raised garden beds with various kitchen herbs. My mom is now over 70 years old and has officially given the house over to my brother and I so that we won't be taxed on inheriting it when she passes. Since then, I've been sporadically taking care of the gardens. I like them in their wild shape with all the birds, bees, bumblebees, and butterflies flying around. In autumn, we get hedgehogs, and we've been visited by a fox recently, which sent my cats into a panic. Then recently, we received a letter from the city stating that our garden was interfering with the safety of the street because the hedge was overgrowing the pavement and it contained poisonous berries, which were a danger to people walking by. Now, my brother trims the hedge every month to make sure nothing is overgrowing the pavement in any way. And while the berries are poisonous, to get to them, you'd have to be quite resilient because they're surrounded by thorns. They are also known to be an ideal food for some local birds. So, I contacted our local Nature Conservation Association and asked if they would like to have a look at our gardens and maybe tell us if we could improve anything to make them even more nature-friendly. They came, looked around, and then told us they rarely see gardens so in touch with nature. They approved our garden as especially nature-friendly and contacted the city to tell them that from their point of view, any changes would be considered unfriendly to nature. And since our city prides itself with once being one of the green capitals in our country, they had to budge. Don't mess with my gardens. There was a guy in one of the suburbs near me that had a similar approach. He let all the native plants grow wild around his house because he liked living near nature. His neighbors complained to the local council that it was unsightly and a fire hazard. The council sent him notices to trim it back and clean it up. He refused them all. The council set a date that they would come and remove all trees, plants, and shrubs and charge him for the cost involved. He contacted a local environmental agency that came and inspected his property, and they found 2 species of endangered birds had nested there. One was assumed extinct. After that, there was nothing they could do, as the birds were protected by law. Am I the jerk because I won't cook for my roommates? About 5 months ago, I struck an agreement with my roommates. My husband and I live with 2 other people, and we have a pretty small fridge, so there was never any room for anything in it, because there were always 2 households worth of ingredients stocked in it. Plus, it was getting pretty annoying having 2 sets of people fight, not really, over the same kitchen every day when it was time to cook dinner. So I proposed a deal. Everyone contribute into a communal dinner budget, and I would cook dinner for all 4 of us every day. I'm great at economizing and cooking on a low budget, and not to toot my own horn or anything, but cooking is a huge hobby of mine, so I feel confident saying I'm not too shabby at that either. I like to cook a wide range of foods, which is something my husband loves. For example, Japanese-style ramen, Chinese braised pork over rice, Moroccan curry, shakshuka, pasta salad, grilled fish with roasted vegetables, and authentic Italian carbonara are all things that might show up on the dinner table when I cook. Things went well for a while, but after a couple of months, our roommates started making requests. That's fine. Sometimes I would even ask for ideas on what to cook, but then the restrictions started and never stopped adding up. Here's the list of things they don't want me to use at all. No pasta, no curry, no rosemary, thyme, oregano, no provincial herbs, olives, no Asian noodles, no soy sauce, no oyster sauce, peanut-based sauces, chickpeas, no lamb, pesto, basmati rice, no pork belly, sun-dried tomatoes, Szechuan peppers, no balsamic, no couscous, no shrimp, no fennel, no sugar, and must be low salt. I'm pretty sure there are plenty that I forgot, but they would definitely be mentioned if I used. I like to be adventurous when I cook, and I just got really tired of being so limited. It honestly felt like I was being handed a new restriction every other day after a while. So I stopped cooking for them and went back to only cooking for my husband and I. But my roommates are pretty upset that I'm not cooking anymore. They've started hinting that they would like me to cook for them again, and I just say no. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. You're not a restaurant. They can go back to eating cheese out of a tube. I will move in, eat all of your food, try all of your experiments, and never complain. Not the jerk. Am I the jerk for not paying half towards my dog's puppy's vet bill and expenses? I know this sounds insane, but it's been causing grief for weeks. I moved back home a few years ago to take over my parents' hobby farm. My parents asked I continue to keep sheep and goat herds. Animals that try to eat our goats are common, so we've always had livestock guard dogs there. I have two. They're very well trained and socialized, but I don't allow dogs I don't know on the farm unless I'm there the entire time. The setup is like an H. One side is the sheep pastures and barn. The other side is goats. In the middle is a gigantic fenced-in area for the dogs where their toys, feeders, water troughs, wading pools, and dog sheds are. They can go from one pasture to the other. The gate to the dog area faces the back of the house. It was a regular garden gate, but I fixed it so wild animals couldn't climb over the top of it. The only space is about an 8-inch gap between the top of the gate and the gate post to move the latch easily. Too small for my dogs to squeeze through, and nothing has gone through there before. One of my dogs is a male and not neutered for reasons relating to the community, and us all knowing where our helpers come from and are going to since these doggos perform a specific function in a farming community. Other dog is an older female and spayed. My job requires me to travel once in a while. I had a week trip about 4 months ago. My girlfriend invited her friend Taylor to come stay with her while I was gone. Before Taylor arrived, she asked us if there was a room she could put her dog's crate in. I told her not to bring her dog since I'd be gone. She arrives, she has her dog. In heat. My girlfriend told her she could bring her. I offered to pay for her dog to go to a local kennel since I'd be gone, but my girlfriend and Taylor said I was controlling. I told them I just didn't want to leave room for issues. Day before I have to leave, Taylor let her dog out unsupervised, and I caught her dog trying to squeeze through the gap of the gate. Got her dog, brought her back in, told her she either needs to keep her dog on a leash and supervised at all times when outside, or she goes home now. My girlfriend and I fought about it again, and I had to leave for my work trip before it was resolved. I asked my cousin while I was gone. He said he and his wife saw the dog on the leash. Taylor left the day I got home. Weeks later, her dog had puppies. Girlfriend admitted that they only put Taylor's dog on the leash when my cousin was over and let her run around the rest of the time. Her dog kept getting into the dog yard with my boy, and they stopped her if they saw her. Taylor wants me to pay half of the vet bills and puppy expenses until they're homed. She's railing about me to my girlfriend about me not having my dog neutered. I refuse to pay. My dogs are contained, and they stayed where they are supposed to be, and I told Taylor to not bring her dog to begin with. She and my girlfriend can cover the expenses since they went behind my back. Am I in the wrong here? Not the jerk. She brought her non-spayed dog to a house with a non-neutered male dog while her dog was in heat. It takes a special kind of stupid to let a dog in heat run around unsupervised, and you tried to keep it from happening. People like this give me tension headaches. Not the jerk. And why is she getting at you for not having your working dog neutered when her pet dog is also not spayed? This is her own fault. You told her not to bring her dog, and she did anyway, knowing her own dog was in heat. She's a moron. Edit. Your girlfriend is also the jerk and an idiot, because she definitely should have known this would happen and went behind your back on it anyway. Not the jerk. That friend knew exactly what she was doing and very likely wanted her dog to have puppies for the money she would get from them. You owe her nothing. You told her not to bring the dog and she ignored you. When you offered a compromise of leashed and supervised all the time or leave, she did neither and lied. She made her bed, she can lie in it. Also, consider getting a new girlfriend while you're at it. Am I the jerk for leaving the house while my girlfriend is still sleeping? So I made plans for us to get up, go work at a coffee shop, then meet my family for lunch, and then go to the market. Very nice day. My girlfriend likes to sleep in, and I get up super early, 5:30 a.m. to 6 a.m. I told her I wanted to leave early, like 7 a.m., because I had a ton of work to do before seeing my family. She expressed how exhausted and tired she was yesterday. So this morning, when I woke up at 6, considering we went to bed at 11:30 p.m., I didn't wake her up and let her sleep. I got ready to leave and went to give her a kiss goodbye while telling her, "Take all the time you need. Meet me at the coffee shop. I don't want to rush you. I know you're tired." She all of a sudden gets all cold with me, saying, "OMG, why didn't you wake me up? I thought we were going together." I expressed that I wanted to let her sleep because I knew how tired she was and that she can just meet me later. Later being an hour later so she can get ready while I get a head start on my work. I finally leave the house and she texts me basically saying how she doesn't understand why I was able to wake her up to say goodbye but not able to wake her up when I woke up. She later starts texting me, arguing, saying that it isn't fair that we made plans and I'm going off on my own without her. All I wanted to do was let her sleep in more because I knew how tired she was. She starts with a name calling, etc. And I told her, instead of arguing with me, since you're already up, get ready and come over. The coffee place is 10 minutes away from our house. She says she doesn't want to drive there and pay for parking and pay for gas. I don't know if she expected me to drive back to pick her up. I really think she's being a baby. My solution would be to just get in your car, drive over. It's not that difficult. I apologized for not waking her up, but I genuinely just wanted her to sleep. She finally basically cancels all our daily plans and says, "Have a nice day." I'm sitting in the coffee shop alone now. It's been 2 hours. She isn't coming. So, am I the jerk for leaving while she was still asleep? You're the jerk. You made plans with her and decided without asking her she could just meet you. I get you think it's being sweet letting someone get more sleep, but I'll let you in on a secret. Better ask than to assume. Women like communication. I think your gesture of letting her take her time is nice, but she wanted that choice in her court, not yours. Next time, wake her up, then ask, and if anything, at least you tried. Calling her a baby because she's frustrated with how you went about something isn't right. Honestly, I'd be pressed, mostly knowing you have to pay for parking and how insane gas prices are, that my partner would leave me and want me to drive to meet them. Most women don't feel good when their partner leaves them behind. You're the jerk, dude. Should have asked her if she wanted to sleep in. You guys made plans and you changed them without asking. I know you had good intentions, but you should have asked her if she wanted to sleep in and meet you later. You're the jerk. Gas prices are expensive, and it's not surprising she would want to take one trip instead of 2. You can't just take gas for granted like that. If you had the idea of waking up earlier and her sleeping in, you should have discussed it with her the night before. Instead, you woke her up and stressed her out, which defeated the whole purpose. You're the jerk. Major red flags on your part, and you sound like a real creep. I know exactly how your girlfriend feels, and I hope she leaves you. Do you have any clue how infuriating it is when someone changes plans without even asking if you're okay with it first? And the way you talk about wanting to let her sleep in, you really think you're some sort of a hero, don't you? The bar literally couldn't be set any lower than it already is for you dudes, and you still act like this? Unbelievable. I've accepted that I'll probably be single forever because it's nearly impossible to find a decent guy these days. She's single? Gee, I wonder why. Hey Karen, haven't we read a story similar to this where the boyfriend got mad that his girlfriend didn't wake him up when she got up? We sure have, and everyone told her to leave him because it's a major red flag and she's not his mama and shouldn't have to wake him up. Don't you just love Reddit? A fiasco with pancakes. This happened at a restaurant a few years ago. We'll just call it Cracker Barrel. So on a busy Sunday afternoon, the church crowd was slowly winding down and we were nearing our dinner rush. This particular restaurant, you can order breakfast all day. At around 3 p.m., 2 ladies were seated in my section and I greeted them promptly. Both ordered drinks and their food as well at the same time. Guest 1 ordered Mama's pancake breakfast with scrambled eggs and cheese with extra crispy bacon. Guest 2 ordered the grandma's sampler with scrambled eggs and cheese with extra crispy sausage, bacon, and ham. I put their order in exactly as they ordered it and told the cooks how they said they wanted to see no pink anywhere. Cooks make the food. I expedite and bring out their meal. Everything looks the way they ordered it: charcoal, bacon, sausage, and ham. I set the food down and they immediately start running me. Never once did they ask for everything at the same time, even after I asked, "Is there anything else I can get for you?" Every time I brought back something like hot sauce, ketchup, or napkins, they always needed something else. After 5 minutes of back and forth, they said everything was fine and I went and did other duties. They hadn't touched their food until I had everything for them they had me run around for. A few minutes later, my manager on duty comes to me and asks me about table 231. He says that they are complaining their eggs are cold and the food is burned. I explained they said everything looked fine and their eggs wouldn't have been cold if they had asked me for extra napkins, hot sauce, ketchup, and extra butter and jelly on one trip instead of 6. He goes back and forth with them and they are adamant they are not paying for the eggs or bacon and are only paying for the pancakes. Cue malicious compliance. The grandma's sampler comes with 2 pancakes, a sampler of meat, eggs, and a side of your choice for $9.99. 2 a la carte pancakes are $7.99, so $2 off for all you math geniuses out there. Mama's pancake breakfast comes with 3 pancakes, eggs, and your choice of meat for $7.99. 3 a la carte pancakes are $9.99, which is obviously $2 more than the breakfast. Manager on duty hands the receipts to each lady and both stop him before he can walk away. Guest 2 is upset she's paying $2 less than what her breakfast would have cost, and she felt that wasn't a good enough discount. Guest 1 is upset because her meal is now more than what it was before. The only thing my boss kept saying to both of them was, "You asked to only pay for the pancakes, and that's what I charged you for." And then he walked away. They paid up front, complaining the entire time at the cash register and making a scene. Threatened to call corporate and said they will be returning to speak to someone higher than my manager on duty. Manager on duty and I went in the back and kept laughing. You don't get many wins in the service industry, but this one will always be a memorable one. Am I the jerk for declining to crochet a sweater for my cousin? I, 38 female, crocheted myself a cardigan recently that I really like and I wear it often. I went to visit a cousin who's 42 and her daughter who's 18 with my mother who's 71, and I wore the cardigan. Cousin's daughter complimented me on it and abruptly asked me to make one for her. I explained it took me about 40 hours to make mine. It's fine yarn and pretty long, and that I could send her the tutorial I learned it from. She starts to tear up a bit and sniffles while telling me, "That's not fair. You know I don't know how to do that kind of stuff." I try to gently explain that the tutorial is really good at showing and teaching how. She's still looking pouty. Cousin pipes up at this point, saying it would be nice if I could just make her one, that she's too busy to spend all that time on a sweater because she works. This hit a nerve with me because my cousin often makes passive-aggressive comments about how I don't work. I'm a stay-at-home mom, work-at-home mom to 3 kids under 8, and have a little home-based business doing tailoring and mending, some crafting, etc. She doesn't consider my work to be real work, acts like I must live a life of leisure. Previously, I had always bitten my tongue and changed the subject because I didn't want the drama, but I just let it out this time. I told her I do work, and I do it while caring for 3 kids. She laughed and said it hardly pays enough to be considered work. I lost my temper and told her my finances were none of her business and that she's out of her mind to think she can treat me so rudely while trying to demand hours and hours of my labor for free. Cousin starts crying at this point and the visit obviously ends. Afterwards, my mom tells me she's very disappointed in me for the language that I used and that I am partly to blame for wearing the sweater that started the argument and I wasn't polite. I flatly told her that's ridiculous. It's an article of clothing. It's meant to be worn. I have quite a few pieces of clothing that I've made myself. Should I stop wearing any of them in case entitled people decide they want me to make them all free clothes? Anyways, now my cousin and cousin's daughter are thinking I'm the jerk, and my mom thinks we're all jerks apparently. Am I the jerk? My time is valuable. It takes me 40 hours. My hourly rate is $30 plus yarn. This sweater is worth $1,250. Are you actually asking me to give you over $1,000? I haven't worked here in 10 years. Just for some context, I worked in retail at the same store for about 15 years. I was part of the management team. When we had our highest-ranked manager leave to explore other opportunities, she was a young single mother, and the retail management life doesn't afford you as much family time as you might think. Myself, along with the rest of our team, had to run the store on our own for a while we waited for her replacement to be trained in another store, which afforded the rest of us with even less family time. So by the time the new manager was able to start, me and the rest of our team were completely burnt out, which was not helped much by the fact that our new team member was a real Karen-type personality. She wouldn't do the work, but then would criticize our work for not being done the way she wanted it to be. As she was higher on the food chain, if she didn't like my work, I had to redo it. So 1 week into the new queen's reign of terror, I'd had enough. I was done rebuilding the same displays 15 times in a shift. So I walked into the cash office, where I knew she would be sitting down on the phone with her friend for the 5th time in the 2 hours she had to be there. Handed in my resignation effective immediately, handed in my keys, and walked out. I never felt that free in my life. Fast forward to this past holiday season, I'm out doing some heavy Christmas shopping for the family. I run into a woman who I recognize as a regular customer who always came in when I was still working there. Also a Karen type. She was always that one customer that no one ever wanted to check out, so I often ended up being the one to check her out back in the day because I was really good at gritting my teeth behind a big smile, some sarcasm, and a can-do attitude. She walks up to me and says, "I see you're out of," some product that I didn't care to commit to memory, and asks if I will check the back, to which I reply, "I'm sorry, I don't work here." I'm clearly not in the company dress code as I'm wearing a winter coat for starters, but also sweatpants, snow boots, and a winter hat. So I figured that will be the end. "Nope," she replied with, "You do too work here. I know you're just coming in or shopping on your day off, but it's your job to help the customers in this store. Now help me." I said, "Seriously, ma'am, I don't work here." To which she responds, "I know you do. You've checked me out before." I said, "Yes, I did work here, and I did check you out before 10 years ago, and I haven't worked here for 10 years now." As I'm walking away to move to another aisle, I hear her just whining about how horrible of an employee I am, and she's going to see to it that I'm fired. I brush it off and keep shopping. About the time I was starting to forget about the interaction completely, I turn a corner and see Amy, my former subordinate, who is the new head manager and a good friend of mine. Heading straight towards me, Karen's hands are flailing, still complaining that Amy has a horrible employee and she wants her fired now. When Amy sees who it is that Karen is complaining about, she couldn't hold back. She busts up laughing and says, "Ma'am, I can't fire her. She doesn't work here anymore. And even if she did, she would still be my boss." She then accuses Amy of lying to try and cover up her own ineptitude. She storms off, leaving a cart full of items behind. I took a few minutes to talk to Amy, and I even helped her put Karen's stuff back on the shelf when Amy was called to the back office. As I'm checking out, I can still hear Karen arguing with them that she knows I work here and she will have us all fired. They ended up having to pull out past employee files and show her my resignation letter dated 10 years earlier before she would finally go away. Last time I spoke to Amy, she said Karen hasn't been back since. Quit your job and raise my kid. My sister-in-law, brother's wife, is a real Karen. High maintenance and demanding to the extreme. She will demand things from my parents, to which they say no, and then she gets mad, refuses to talk to them, and takes it out on my brother until he calls up my parents to ask they apologize because it's making his life horrible. Years ago, when they had their first kid, my niece, my parents were elated at their first grandkid. Sister-in-law's mom isn't in the picture, so my mom was very attentive to sister-in-law, helping her shop for baby, being a supportive shoulder, even offering advice and insight into pregnancy, labor, and birth. Sister-in-law lavished in the attention and things were golden, until sister-in-law went back to work. I was at my parents' house visiting when the phone rings. Dad answers, listens for a few, and then simply says, "I'm not getting in the middle of them. Talk to your mother." And he hands the phone to my mom. She listens a bit and then says, "Well, I'm sorry, but I'm just not okay with her plan. I'm not going to apologize and I'm not quitting my job. That's the end of it." And she hangs up. Of course, I had to demand details. Sister-in-law was going back to her job and called my mom up a day or two prior to this to discuss childcare. She told my mom about the daycares she had checked out and how expensive they all were and what a struggle it was going to be. But then she had a brilliant idea. My mom should become a full-time nanny for niece. Of course, she would have to quit her job, but since she's only 5 years from retirement, it's not a big deal. My mom graciously informed her that while she loved watching niece, she was not going to quit her job. Cue a hissy fit. But the only other person who could do it is sister-in-law's 90-year-old grandma, but she could only watch niece at her house because she's 90 and she doesn't drive, and she has too many pets, 3 of which were sister-in-laws that she dumped on her. Daycare is so expensive. Don't you want quality time with niece? Mom suggested maybe sister-in-law find a cheaper daycare. No, Montessori daycares are the absolute best. Mom pointed out she's never even heard of that, so there's no way her childcare would be Montessori. Mom suggested sister-in-law go back to work part-time and then daycare would only have to be part-time and thus cheaper. No, if she wants to stay on track for her retirement goals, she needs to go back full-time. Mom ran out of advice and finally just said, "Well, and I think you're going to need to lower your standards or find another option because I'm not quitting my job and that's final." And she hung up on her. My mom was not happy at how hard I laughed, and of course, when I had my kid a few years later, I jokingly asked how close she was to retirement because I needed a nanny. She messed up. This one lady has been at the hotel before and became notorious because her kids were rowdy. I'm in the back office and I hear her check in at the front desk with the front desk attendant. She signs the registration card for the 2 queen rooms for 3 nights already, but asks how much a 2-queen suite is. He tells her it's $189 and $80 price difference per night. It's too much money for 3 nights, she says. She tells the front desk she'll take the suite for the first night, but move to the cheaper room tomorrow for the other 2 nights. Sure, that's no problem. Tomorrow morning, I'm working the shift, and I see her in the morning. I ask her if she will be moving to the cheaper room today or staying in the same room. She tells me she will stay in the suite room. Okay, no problem. The following morning, I'm working the shift again and I see her. Ask her the same question. She says she'll stay in the suite room. Sure, no problem. Not sure why she would have been insistent on moving if the price is too high since she took the room for all 3 nights, but okay. She checks out after the 3rd night with no problems. Well, except her kids threw a pool chair into the pool and stole our door padlock. She's already not in good graces with the hotel. A few days later, I'm in the back office and I answer a phone call. It's her. She's wondering why her bill is so high. I explained to her that while she was checking in, I was in the back office and heard the entire exchange. I explained how she verbally agreed to the rate change and wanted to move to the cheaper room for the 2nd and 3rd night. I tell her I'm the one who asked if she wanted to move and she declined twice, thus locking the increased rate. She says, "The paper I signed has a different rate. You're scamming me. I'm not paying more than what I signed." Oh, I see where this is going. She thinks she can save money by doing this scam. I tell her I'm not reducing the rate. I heard her verbal agreement. I explain her verbal agreement with the rate change is enough. If she had a problem with the rate, she should have moved or not taken the suite room, and she should have seen her folio we provided under her door and inquired then before checking out. She wasn't buying it. It wasn't a pretty argument. She says, "I have a future reservation there. What can we do so this situation doesn't happen again?" Oh, heck no. I look up her reservation and I tell her, "What we can do is cancel your reservation because we're not renting to you anymore. You're banned." "You can't do that," she says. "Oh, yes, I can. I'm doing it right now. You're not welcome here anymore." I then hung up on her. A week later, I get a chargeback on my desk from her for the difference of rate. I explain the situation to the credit card company and win the case. She has yet to return. HR Karen insists on changing our relaxed dress code at my job. Big mistake. Howdy, folks. This one took place closing in on 6 years ago. The bosses, at the time, were usually very cool and easy to get along with. However, some Karen got into HR and insisted on changing the work culture to suit her desires and vision. She rewrote the dress code, and overnight, instead of being allowed to show up dressed comfortably, as long as it wasn't dirty, smelly, or full of holes, tech support center, We suddenly had to dress business professional. She even specified the materials the clothing could be made out of. She tried firing almost everyone there for violating dress code before a manager, one I still love to this day, told her to calm herself because she had not only not published the dress code, it hadn't been approved by management. HR Karen gets upset and pulls strings to get it approved in a couple of days. So in those couple of days, I was reading through the dress code, trying to see what I could do to make her regret it. The dress code, word for word: clothing is to be made of woolen materials only, unless a specific exception is made below. Allowable clothing is listed as business suits, button-up dress shirts, monocolor ties, leather shoes, skirts, and blouses. If wearing a skirt or blouse, silk materials are accepted. Of note, the silk exception was put in solely for her as she claimed that wool gave her hives. Anyway, the air conditioning had been out for weeks, and we had been getting by in the building with big fans and wearing light shorts and shirts. It was a hot summer, so I searched for a loophole in the new dress code. I'm sure you can already see what loophole I found and exploited. Note, despite having lost a lot of weight since then, I am still a hefty, very hairy man, over 200 pounds lost since then, with a very long beard. So day one of the new dress code, on the way to work, I stopped in at a local Goodwill. I bought the most garish skirt I could find that I could squeeze in, with the most feminine blouse I could find. I paid for them and got dressed at a gas station just down the street for the work location. I waltzed into work with lots of stares coming my way. However, I was the only man on the floor not sitting in a pool of his own sweat. Skirts are surprisingly breezy. Less than 30 minutes in, everyone in the building can hear HR Karen screaming at and about me as she runs up to my desk and demands I go to her office for disciplinary action. I tell her I cannot do that as company policy states that disciplinary action can only be undertaken by the employee's team lead and the site manager, not HR. She then screams at both of them to force me into her office. They both give me the stink eye, but I give them a thumbs up and a big grin and say, "Please, please, please, make me go into her air-conditioned office." Did I also mention she had the only working air conditioner on site? So the four of us trudged to her office, with me grinning ear to ear. Myself and many coworkers laughing at this large, hairy, heavily bearded man in a silk skirt walking past everyone. All because I, and they, know how ridiculous I look, and how they know I only pulled stunts at work like this when I am 100% in the right. So we get to HR Karen's office and I sit down. She tells me I'm going to be fired for insubordination and breaking dress code. I laugh in her face and tell her, terminations can only be processed upon agreement by the team lead of the employee, site management, and HR. You are the one that insisted upon and wrote that rule. Unless they both agree, you are lying and can shut up. She was screaming at the top of her lungs at this point. She said it was harassment for me, a big hairy guy, to be dressed like this. Oh, can you point out in the dress code where I can't wear a skirt? As soon as I said that, my team lead suddenly lit up and started giggling as she knew where I was taking this. Karen got out a written copy of the dress code and then started sputtering and stammering as she read it word for word as I typed it above. As she started screaming at me again for being inappropriate, the site manager looked at her and said, "Do you really want to get fired for harassment? He has you caught in a ring or over a barrel of fire, and it would cost us potentially millions." Strangely enough, the dress code was rescinded before the end of the day, and we were allowed to go back to the way we had been dressing. As an extra, she's no longer with the company and has been gone for years now. She made blunder after blunder, usually screaming at me and my bosses, but I always pointed her at the policies she made and got approved, as I was following them to the letter. Have you ever had a dress code that you couldn't stand? If so, what was wrong with it? Please let us know. As long as I can wear my Live, Laugh, Love shirt, I'm happy. Am I the jerk for returning the money my husband took from my family for attending our cookout? For context, I'm female 28, and my husband, who's 33, comes from a wealthy family, and he himself has inherited a number of assets from his relatives. One of them is this huge house where we live right now, with a pool and a huge backyard with lots of features. We decided to host our first cookout after we got married 7 months ago, and we invited both his and my family. That was on Friday. Both families came and we had lots of fun, and then everyone went home later. I then got a phone call from my mom, and she didn't sound okay. She asked whether or not my husband took money from his family before they attended the cookout. I was confused, I asked what she was talking about, and she told me that my husband charged every single person from my side of the family who attended the event $25. I was utterly shocked and very angry, and I felt like this has legitimately damaged my relationship with most of my family because almost all of them came over. Not only that, but he got $275 from them. I was so livid, I hung up the phone and confronted him immediately. He told me my family got to enjoy the space and view and said that I should think of it as a resort cookout since this house has lots of luxuries. I told him it was a horrible thing for him to do, and that what made it worse is the fact that his family didn't have to pay like mine had to. He laughed and then reminded me that his family gave him this house. I demanded he give the money back, but he said no, and that he won't even give it to me since the house is technically his. I went and took the money and gave everyone who paid their money back with a sincere apology from me. My husband found out and flipped out at me, calling what I did an overstepping and disrespectful. I told him he shouldn't have taken money from my family for being guests at our house, but he said it's his house and said that he had bet my family has never got to attend a cookout at a house like this and that it was just $25, but I disrespected him and went behind his back and took the money that wasn't mine. We stopped talking after this argument, and he keeps venting to his mom about me taking his money that he earned his own way. Your husband sounds like the world's biggest jerk. Needless to say, not the jerk. Your husband's reasoning makes no sense. Who charges people, let alone family, to come to their house and have a party? Rich people? You don't get rich and definitely don't stay rich by being a nice person. I worked in financing for a few years and often would speak to clients who were wealthy. I learned pretty quickly that there were two kinds of millionaires, nice rich people and jerks. Many of the kindest people I talked to in those years were our wealthiest clients. I suspect that many of them became wealthy because people wanted to engage with them, patronize their businesses, and hire them because they were nice people. There were also definitely clients who inherited wealth and displayed an astonishing amount of entitlement. There were also plenty of clients who would get incredibly nasty about accounts that were worth very little. Those were the jerks. Money doesn't change who you are, it amplifies who you are. I spent decades working in the banking industry. I found that many people got rich because they found a way to hang on to every single penny. Funny you should say this. When I got into the hotel business way back when, it never ceased to amaze me how unbelievably cheap rich people could be. I was venting to my dad about this once. He laughed and said, "How do you think they got rich?" Am I the jerk for leaving my fiancé at the mall after he insisted that I buy him a $350 watch? Me, female 32, and my fiancé, male 30, Aaron, have been together for 2 years. I have a high-paying job and I work long hours. He used to have, a 3-week shift at a job that pays about 5 times less than mine. We're on pretty great terms on everything except money. He's a big spender and spends so much on fancy stuff, although his job does not give him this luxury. He constantly likes and wants new stuff like watches, gadgets, electronics, and car accessories, and I do my best to use every occasion, like Christmas and birthdays and New Year's, to get him the things that he wants. Lately, and after he lost his job, I've been noticing him tagging along whenever I go shopping, then have me buy him expensive stuff right then and there. I end up paying to avoid causing a scene in public because he'd beg me, then start throwing a fit if I refuse. I talked to him about it since it seemed like a pattern, but he said he just happened to see something he liked and thought I could pay for it. I told him that I no longer feel comfortable with this, and that next time he tries to put me on the spot, then have me pay for something that he likes and throws a tantrum if I refused, then I'd walk out and I'd leave him there. He crossed his heart and said he'd never do such a thing. On Wednesday, we went to the mall to get a Father's Day gift for my dad, and we walked by the accessory store. Aaron told me to stop and follow him as he entered the store. I knew this wasn't going to go well because he repeatedly tried on this watch that was worth over $350 and expressed his admiration for it. He then asked if I could pay for it, but I said no and lied about having only $300 for my dad's gift, which is why we were there in the first place. He started going on and on about how cool and catch the watch was, then asked if my dad was more important than him. I looked around and saw people looking at us as he started raising his voice. I told him to knock it off, but he refused and insisted I pay for it. I just turned around and walked out of the store and out of the mall. I got in my car and went home. He started calling me nonstop, but we didn't talk until he got home. He blew up, saying I acted ridiculously and selfishly after he begged me and I refused. He said that I then made a joke out of him by walking out and leaving him at the mall. I told him of what I said would happen if he decided to put me in this position again. He argued that all he was asking for was just $350 and even showed me a small notebook saying he's been writing down everything I pay for so he could pay me back, but I was too selfish to even consider it. He yelled at me about this, then went out to meet his friends. His best friend tried to get involved by shaming me for how I behaved at the mall and hinting that what I was doing was borderline financial control. Am I the jerk? Should I have just paid for the watch? Edit. He said he was going to pay me back, but didn't tell me this at the mall. Don't know if it changes anything since he has no money. Not the jerk. Break up with him and tell him he now has full financial control of his own life. OP. I think that the entire situation just seemed like he was struggling with money at first, and I tried to be understanding, but then I couldn't keep paying for stuff that, in my opinion, was not essential, even after he said he'd pay me back. It started affecting my money because it affected my ability to pay off debts and monthly expenses. Honey, please don't marry this man. Please don't. He will absolutely ruin your finances, if not your life. But let's be generous and forget the money stuff for a second. Focus on how comfortable he is with yelling at you in public. He either has a terrible temper or he knows he can manipulate you by causing a scene. Either way, that's horrific and not something you want to suffer for the next 50-ish years. Getting his friend in on it too is sickening. I'm also 32 with a 30-year-old fiance, and he has never ever raised his voice to me in public because that's not how you treat someone you love. Your guy is using you at worst and a spoiled baby at best. You deserve better and to keep your hard-earned money. Not the jerk. You're supposed to be his girlfriend, not his sugar mama, and has he taken any steps to get another job? You need to take a step back from this relationship. Not everyone is a high earner, but most people have pride and dignity and respect their partner. And the fact he claims he has written everything down in a notebook, I don't believe it. He is a user. Am I the jerk for not giving my 18-year-old stepson my 4-year-old daughter's money? My husband and I have been together for 7 years, married for 5. He has a son and a daughter from his previous marriage, 18 and 13, and we have a 4-year-old daughter together. Although we have some shared expenses, for the most part we keep our finances separate. Custody is shared 50-50 between my husband and his ex regarding the older kids. Long story short, my oldest stepson graduated a couple weeks ago. He's only ever wanted to go to one school, which happens to be very specialized and hence very expensive university out of state. He applied, was accepted, and got a decent but not phenomenal scholarship from the school itself. Meanwhile, my husband has been encouraging him to look into additional scholarships and potentially ROTC or Air National Guard to help with the remainder of expenses. My husband's company went under a couple of years ago, and he is just beginning to recover financially, so paying out of pocket for his son's tuition is simply not an option. Unfortunately for stepson, his focus here lately has been on his new girlfriend and not his academics and scholarships. And unfortunately, he's decided his dad is an idiot when it comes to scholarships and military service and that he'll figure it out on his own. All fine and good, except for the fact that he hasn't figured it out on his own. And sometime here in the next several months, the university he wants to attend is asking for roughly $25,000 in tuition money. After dodging financial conversations and scholarship conversations with my husband for the past 6 or 7 months, he finally came out and asked his dad how he was going to be paying for the tuition because the school is starting to ask for deposits, etc. Husband broke it to him that there is no college fund set aside. Apparently, biological mom has been telling him that there was. I have no idea where she got that idea. Now the whole family is up in arms that my stepson may not be able to go to the school of his choice. Now it's come up that our 4-year-old daughter has a college fund and investment account, because on my computer there is literally a folder on the desktop that has the investment links and logins and paperwork organized. Right now it has about $8,000 in it, all of it from me personally depositing money and all of the little cash gifts my daughter receives for Christmas and birthdays, etc. Because of how badly this whole tuition and university situation has exploded, my husband now thinks we should pay for my stepson's stuff with my daughter's money and he will pay me back. The problem is, I've already given my husband a pile of money for other things and I've never gotten it back, so I said no. Am I the jerk for ruining my stepson's university opportunity? Everyone else seems to think so, but I seem to think this should have been talked about before and dealt with a long time ago. Not the jerk. Protect that money at all costs. Change whatever passwords you need to. Call the bank and ensure that you are the only one who can access it. Not to mention, she won't be ruining his chances. He can take out student loans for this year and work on getting grants and scholarships for the next one. It's probably too late for him to apply for government-backed loans if he's in the US, though OP should look into those, because I don't know that for sure, but at least husband or son could take out private loans to get him through this year. This was the son's mistake, and it isn't unreasonable for him to have to take out the burden of loans to solve it. Though maybe biological mom should be taking out the loans, since she's the one who lied about there being a secret amount waiting for him. Not the jerk. You've given your husband a lot of money that he never paid you back. There is your answer. If you give this money over, you will never see it again. Your husband hasn't sorted out the college fund for his older kids. Why would you trust him to be responsible for your daughter's college fund? $8,000 is also not enough to make a significant difference in a college that is that expensive, so you would just be delaying the inevitable. Son would need to get student loans or reconsider other options. Maybe defer for a year. Your husband has not been honest with his son about the lack of funds and should have been. He would have been more likely to knuckle down if he knew he needed to. Keep your finances separate and make sure your daughter's investment fund cannot be emptied by your husband. The other kid is 13. There's still time to heavily encourage your husband to put money away for her and be clear with her for what the situation is. Well, what do you think? Should OP use her daughter's college fund for her stepson or not? Please let us know.
Absolutely not. Why do people always think they're entitled to someone else's money?
Everyone gets one. I work at a resort restaurant that serves food to a neighboring poolside bar. Every summer when the bar opens, I'm scheduled to work as a server, taking and running orders to customers. Yesterday was my first big day back as a server, and I was excited. This weekend, the resort was hosting a big golf tournament and a large wedding, so the pool was loaded with people. Imagine a sea of human heads bobbing up and down rather than water, and you can basically imagine what our crowd was like. And these people were thirsty. They wanted everything, and lucky for them, I was here to make their dreams come true. The shift was absolute chaos. People were demanding drinks every 5 minutes, and it was difficult to keep up with, especially with the Texas heat boiling everything in sight. Halfway through, I came up to a group of gentlemen who were part of the golf tournament, important for later. I'm taking a few orders from them when one of their friends, who I'll just call Jeff, cuts in and tells me that he's going to get his credit card and for me to charge all their drinks onto that card. I say okay, and as he's exiting the cool, sunscreen-tainted waters of the pool to get his card, I'm talking to his friends and finishing their orders. A minute later, I hear a loud, piercing whistle echo right above and behind me. Then I hear a bellowing, "Hey!" One by one, heads in the pool start to turn. Their eyes show an expression of either confusion or curiosity as the source of the whistle, our dear friend Jeff, holds his credit card out in the air. He then says, "Everyone gets one, on me. One drink." There's a millisecond of silence before the crowded pool erupts into cheers, victorious whistling, and chanting as Jeff stands there victorious. You know those scenes in movies where a guy says, "Drinks are on me"? Well, to be honest, I never once thought I'd be in the middle of such a scenario. I felt like I had stumbled into a crowded concert, not a pool. My poor introverted little heart was freaking out while my mind was trying to figure out what was going on. As I stand up, Jeff proudly hands me his card, which I take with a fearful and uncertain gaze I kept hidden behind my sunglasses. I retreat to the bar, where my bewildered and unaware coworkers and customers stand questioning what happened. I'm holding Jeff's card, asking what to do, and I'm told to basically do it. So that's what I did. I went around the pool taking orders as normal and keeping the card with me. I stopped by this one guy, Gary, who I recognized as one of the men in the group, and asked him why Jeff did this and if it was truly okay. I honestly thought maybe he was drunk and this was a decision made solely on that, and was worried to charge a poor drunk man with hundreds of dollars of drinks. Gary chuckles and said he was definitely serious and explains that it's a special occasion. Remember how I said these guys were from a golf tournament? Well, Jeff had apparently participated and got a hole-in-one on one of the courses. If you've never played golf or even know anything about it, this is insanely lucky and rare. The odds depend on the kind of hole you're playing on as well as many other conditions, but the average golfer basically has a 1 out of 12,500 chance of getting one. The stars would literally have to align for a golfer to get a hole-in-one. I was honestly kind of shocked to learn this and told Gary that I didn't even think it was possible outside of a mini golf game. He smiles, looks at me and says, "Well, why do you think he's celebrating it?" I understood immediately, smiled, and got to work. What was originally chaos became insane. I, as well as my other coworker, were constantly flagged down for drinks, even while we were delivering others. We had so many orders for pina coladas that we burned through almost 4 gallons of mix, as well as 2 bottles of rum. One of our bosses actually sent out a server from the inside to help, and the look on his face when he saw the crowd was honestly kind of hilarious. We took almost an hour to take everyone's orders, make them, and deliver them. People were actually pretty patient and found our rushing around to be entertaining. One couple even tipped me a $100 bill in secret because I was going back and forth so often without complaining at all, which they found impressive. They even left a 110% tip on their check as a thanks for the service. I made sure to give them the best hugs a stranger could give another stranger. In the end, Jeff's bill was somewhere around $760, which included a 20% tip we added. I half expected Jeff to be upset in some capacity, but he was actually an awesome guy. He took his massive bill, looked at the total, and just said,
Huh, well, I expected it to be bigger.
He laughed, signed, and thanked me for the service. He even patted me on the back before he and his group left for the day. Despite how terrified I was at first, the whole experience was really fun, if I'm being honest. It helped how many people were understanding about it and even patient with us. We're still struggling with understaffing, despite being so far away from lockdown, and yet we're working our butts off to make sure service is nearly perfect for our guests. It's hard, but when people are appreciative and reward us for our hard work, it really helps us. To Jeff, congrats on that hole-in-one. You deserved it. I hope you remember that moment for the rest of your life and never ever forget it. And to the rest of you, whether you work in service or not, remember to tip your servers and always keep in mind that a lot of us care about you, not just as customers, but people with needs too. Thanks for reading. Am I the jerk if my mom refused to help me take care of my baby while I go back to work? I, 29 female, asked my mom to help me take care of my newborn so I could go back to work once my leave is up. Mind you, my mom is 64, has been a homemaker / stay-at-home mom since 1992, and hasn't been part of the workforce since then. She refused, saying she's too old and that she already raised her kids. She also added that if I really wanted this baby, then maybe I should have thought about staying home like she did to take care of it while my partner goes to work and provides for us like a traditional family, and that if she and my dad were able to work it out, so can we. However, we're just coming out of a lockdown, going into a possible recession, and there is no way me and my partner can make it financially on one income. I make $55K a year, but have $39K in student loans, plus $20K in other debt, credit card, car loan, medical debt on credit. My partner makes about $36K a year and has $5K in credit card debt. I, as the higher breadwinner, have an internal obligation to go back to work, since not only do I have the most at stake, I also make the most to keep our family afloat. We are currently in a small 1-bedroom apartment in a metropolitan area, and would need to save money to move to a 2-bedroom once the baby grows up in a couple of years, as we will need more space. When I explained all the above to my mom, she then proceeded to say that she will charge me $20 an hour for each hour she takes care of the baby, plus late fees if we're late for pickup, and must provide her with a car seat, stroller, bottles, and pretty much double of everything we have at our home to compensate for taking the baby to her house. She will not step foot in my house for her own personal reasons. She's come in once, and I've lived with my partner for 5 years. She's a 15-minute drive away. I want to save money to bring down our debt and don't want to pay her as much nor invest as much in double of everything, as it will spiral into more debt for me and my partner. I'm on the fence about enrolling my baby into an infant daycare instead, as the cost will overall be lower and a little closer to our home. Due to our jobs, we cannot work from home, so we are in desperate need of childcare. Everyone else in our family works full-time, so they cannot help us as they have a similar 9-to-5 schedule. So, am I the jerk for wanting my mom, who again is at home all day long? Trust me, she does not do anything besides watch TV and cook, to take care of my baby for free while me and my partner try to fix our finances? You're the jerk. Sorry to be blunt and rude, but maybe don't have a kid if you can't afford to take care of them. And if your plan was always to go back to work, you should have discussed that with your mom during your pregnancy. Sounds like they can afford the infant daycare and simply wanted their mom to be a certain type of mother and grandmother. The mom is judging OP, and OP is judging her mom right back. My guess is this isn't really about expecting childcare. The mom's not judging OP. She's pointing out that she should have planned better for childcare as opposed to expecting mom to pick up the slack. It's not her mom's responsibility, it's OP's. Maybe OP should spend less time expecting others to do things for her and more time being self-sufficient. You're the jerk. Your mother is under no obligation to babysit for you. Why are you having a kid you don't seem to know what to do with? And why have you not worked out all of this before now? This is the problem a lot of young couples are facing. Many just have a kid to have one, despite the economical struggle most couples will face. Lots of things are costing more. Daycare, healthcare, rent, gas, etc. However, salaries are not. Personally, unless I know I can live a comfortable life on top of money for my hobbies, I wouldn't want a kid, especially when you have to factor in the 22-year commitment and at least 18 years of being grounded. You're the jerk. Holy entitlement, Batman. Your mom is in no way obligated to take care of your baby. It's generous of her to be willing to do it for pay, and you have the gall to be mad she won't do it for free? She's entitled to spend her life and free time however she wants. It's not her fault you're in debt and decided to have a baby you can't afford. The only thing she may have done wrong at some point along the line is raise you to be this horribly entitled. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her mom? Please let us know.
I don't see how anyone can afford to have kids these days, to be honest.
Whatever you'd usually wear. This happened a long time ago in a friend group of mine. Julia, 27, female at the time of this incident, was having a garden party. Julie was basically a good person, but stressed out over tiny details easily, and when she was throwing a party, she could sometimes get a little, well, whatever the equivalent of a bridezilla is if it's not actually a wedding. In this case, she was driving all of us girls nuts with her vision for the party, which included each of us in a different color, coordinated pastel dress, so that we'd make a collective rainbow and similar antics. Enter Mickey, 24, male. Mickey was, and still is, Julia's best friend. He definitely had a streak of mischief to him, and he was also the only one who could usually make Julia see how ridiculous she was being when she got like this. We asked him to talk to her about it, but he didn't get anywhere this time. Julia just said tiredly, "Please, let me have this. I've been working on it for months." Eventually, we ended up agreeing to wear what she wanted us to wear, so long as she paid for the dresses, which to her credit, she did. Meantime, though, Mickey asked what he was supposed to wear. Now, Julia's vision didn't really include specific plans for how the guys were going to dress, she just wanted them in suits or the like. So when Mickey asked her that, in the middle of a harried moment, she blurted out, "I don't care, just wear whatever you'd normally wear to an outdoor party." Cue malicious compliance. Or at least mischievous compliance, since I don't think there was serious malice involved. See, Mickey worked at a Renaissance fair. When he went to outdoor parties, which he did several times every summer, he attended as part of the staff, and he had a very specific costume he was supposed to wear. And so on the day of the party, he shows up early, along with most of the rest of us, to help Julia set up, and he's wearing a full Renaissance fair jester's costume, complete with cap and bells. To Julia's credit, her first reaction was to laugh her head off. Her second was to swat him. Mickey did set up in the jester's outfit and then finally admitted, just before the party, that he had a different outfit in his bag if she'd like him to change. He hadn't intended to really mess up her party, only to break her brain a little bit before it started. Julia eventually did tell him it would be nice if he'd go change, but she had to think about it. She admitted she was starting to think it might be worth it just to see how everybody else reacted to this perfectly set up garden party with a pseudo-medieval jester wandering around. Employee screams at a guy who ends up being the company's CEO. This is actually a story from my mom from a couple of years ago. She works for an energy company in the customer service, taking phone calls, answering questions, and sometimes helping fix simple issues. It had started not too long ago, and she was one of the few first employees, so right from the start, she knew pretty much everyone who worked there, including the CEO, who she describes as a very nice, down-to-earth guy who'd always dress pretty casually, so he'd blend in with everyone else pretty easily. After a couple of months, they started hiring more people to work, including this one guy who was apparently very entitled and considered himself better than everyone. Mom and a few others didn't like him because he was apparently arrogant, always tried to correct others only to be wrong himself, kept making the same mistakes, ignored many rules on the floor, and had a huge temper and would scream at anyone who said something he didn't like. The screaming would 99.9% of the time be something along the lines of, "Who the heck do you think you are to insert whatever someone did or said?" Many complained about him, but the manager at the time was too nice or scared or both to actually do something about him. One day, he was apparently playing games on his phone while at the same time talking to a customer and telling him all kinds of random wrong things when the CEO came to check the floor after a meeting. Seeing this guy, he walked up to him and calmly informed him he wasn't allowed to have his phone out while helping a customer, so could he completely focus on said customer for the moment. Cue the guy literally throwing his headset off, jumping to his feet and screaming in his face, "And who do you think you are to tell me how to do my job?" along with stomping his foot at each syllable. The boss stood there for a moment, obviously in shock, and the guy, thinking he had won, smirked all smugly before the boss pulled a, well, boss move. "Well, I just so happen to be the CEO of this company," he screamed back, even copying the foot stomping. The dumb guy lost the smirk and, according to my mom, went from angry bright red to pure white in half a second. The boss then calmly grabbed the headset, which apparently still had the customer, who heard everything, and apologized for what she heard and just asked her what she needed help with, finished in a minute, and before hanging up, once again apologized and told her the other guy was fired so it wouldn't happen again. As soon as he hung up, he told the other guy that he was serious and he'd better gather his stuff. In the end, the annoying employee was gone. The manager got a talk on dealing with bad employees, and someone baked the boss a cake. "My old roommate is demanding I pay her child support, but I'm not even the father. I, 24 male, used to live in a 4-bedroom house with 2.5 other roommates. Bree, 22 female, Jay, 2 male, and Alex, 27 male. Now, Bree is a single mother, and she works in a customer support job, and Alex is a paramedic. Alex and I are not the biological father of Bree's son. I don't know who is, but from what Bree says, he's a jerk. I moved out of the house since I've switched companies and make twice as much as I used to, and have decided to live by myself now. So a few days ago, I got a message from Bree saying that she needs child support money. I thought it was a joke, and I assumed she sent it to the wrong person, so I said, 'Lol, girl, wrong number.' But then she said, 'No, OP, I'm serious. I need child support money right now to pay for blah blah blah.' I then told Bree that I will not pay child support money as I'm not her baby daddy, but if she needs to borrow money, then we can work something out, but she will have to pay me back. She then wrote multiple paragraphs of text saying that her son imprinted on me and considers me a father and I need to be a good role model for him. There were other things as well, but it made me want to lose it. I left her on red and immediately messaged Alex about what was going on with screenshots, and he was also bewildered. She hasn't talked to him about the money yet, but I did thoroughly warn him, and he's staying at his sister's house for now. She's still blowing up my phone and threatened a lawsuit for the child support and has been calling me all kinds of names. I feel terrible since I care about her son and he's literally a baby, but I am in no shape his father or have any kinds of responsibility to him. I know she doesn't make much and is living paycheck to paycheck, and I'm open to lending her money, but this makes me feel incredibly weird. Am I the jerk for not giving child support? Important missing info. Did you have a romantic relationship while you were living there? You're the jerk. I had a guy friend just like you who refused to help me out at all with my son. Not only is she a single mom, something you have no idea how difficult it is, but her son sees you as a father figure. Why not just man up and do the right thing? Depriving that kid of basic necessities because you'd rather waste your money on video games does not make you a good person. You may not be her baby daddy, but honestly, you don't even deserve to be. Not the jerk, but I do want to warn you that this happened to my brother. His case was a little different because they did actually date for 2 years, but they never even met until her baby was already a year old. My bro was not the biological father and everyone knew that, but because they lived together for 2 years, after he found out she'd been cheating and left her, she was still able to get court-mandated child support from him. Not the jerk. If she needs money, she needs to go after that kid's biological father. It honestly sounds like she knows you have more money now and she's hoping she can guilt you into paying for things. Let her try to sue you. It will not stand up in court at all. Well, what do you think? Should OP pay child support to his ex-roommate or not? Please let us know.
Never tell people that you're making more money at your new job than you were at your old job. It'll save you a lot of headaches.
My husband left me. Now his ex-wife wants me to pay the child support he owes her. To make a long story short, I'm female 25, and my husband, male 33, just walked out on us a little over a month ago. He completely just up and abandoned me, our 5-year-old and our 18-month-old. He has an ex-wife in her 30s, and they have a 12-year-old daughter from their marriage. No formal custody involved, but we would usually get my stepdaughter every other weekend, and my husband would pay his ex the child support every month on the first when he got paid. My husband's excuse for just leaving us in the dust was that I am damaged goods, and he couldn't hack it being a father anymore. He didn't feel any joy in parenting and wanted to live a free life, so he changed his number, blocked me on all social media, changed all of his passwords, and told his friends and family not to speak to me. It turned my entire life upside down. I've been a stay-at-home mom since our eldest was born, got my degree, and we talked about me going back to the workforce once she entered kindergarten this year in the fall. But it was nothing set in stone. My husband literally gave me an allowance every week to buy groceries, pay bills, buy diapers, anything else the kids needed, etc. I would always stash a little bit away, but he definitely was the breadwinner in our relationship. My husband's ex-wife messaged me earlier today asking if we could talk about something serious. I asked her what was up. She asked if I could pay her for the amount of child support my husband usually gives her every month on the first. I curiously asked her how much because my husband never told me exactly the amount he gave her. I never really thought it was any of my business. She told me she needed the $900 he usually gives her because both she and her new husband are struggling to pay their bills, and they rely on that child support to make their rent payment, and they were behind. I told her I couldn't do it because truthfully I can't. I'm still waiting to get an appointment so I can receive government benefits because with what little money I did have saved up, it's gone now after paying every single bill by myself. To keep a roof over mine and my kids' heads, make sure they're fed, etc. There is and will be no way I can spare almost $1,000 to my husband's ex-wife. She blew up my phone, called me names, said that she can understand why he left me, etc. Threatening to keep my stepdaughter away from me and my kids because we are bad influences, and that my stepdaughter is going to struggle because I can't hand over the money I literally don't even have. I tried apologizing, but it was no use. It just ended with her calling me more names. Am I the jerk here? I feel horrible that my husband has left us both high and dry, but I also have to look out for my own kids. I'm literally skipping meals to make sure they have enough to eat, and I'm scrambling to figure out how I'm going to survive without my husband's help now. Part of me is really conflicted, but I can't give his ex-wife what I don't have. Not the jerk. And you said no formal custody? So does that mean no child support agreement for ex-wife and stepdaughter? If so, file first. Child support is allocated in order of who files first, so you should file before she does. Get a divorce lawyer immediately and take him to the cleaners. Not the jerk. Honestly, I'm confused why the ex-wife would ask you and why you would even debate it internally. This is a no-brainer here. Your soon-to-be ex-husband needs to handle his responsibilities. The audacity of her to even ask you is off the charts. OP. I guess because whenever we would have my stepdaughter, I'd be the one to take her shopping, new manicure, etc. My husband would pay for it, but she never wanted him to take her out, just me. I guess her mom just had it in her head that I had a secret stash of money somewhere. She knew I've been a stay-at-home mom ever since our eldest was born. Lawyer here. Absolutely not your responsibility, not the jerk. Your husband is, and she is, for putting this on you. Assuming you are in the USA, 1. You need a custody order with your husband. Otherwise, in many states, he could take the kids with them and not return home. 2. You need a child support order. Many government benefits won't be paid without it. 3. You need a status quo order. Will prevent him from dissipating and hiding assets or making major changes until you can get divorced. 4. You need to talk to a lawyer about your relationship with your stepdaughter and what visitation rights, if any, you have with her. That varies by state. Do this before anything else. Yes, even the government benefits. You need that SQ order in place. Am I the jerk for telling my husband he'll be lucky if his oldest daughter ever speaks to him again? I married my husband 3 years ago. He was divorced and previously widowed. He has 2 daughters, Annie, who is now 26 from his first marriage, and Amy, who is 17 from his second marriage. My husband told me about his late wife, his ex-wife, the issues he had as a blended family when he remarried, and Annie was not on board with him remarrying, and the fact that this strain ended his second marriage. He was also honest that Annie never forgave him for remarrying and never wanted anything to do with Amy or him after she turned 18. What he did not tell me was the major role he played in all of this. I found this out 3 weeks ago at a dinner with his extended family. The story as I now know it. When Amy was around 5 years old, she took a special interest in a necklace that belonged to his late wife. My husband gave the necklace to Amy, which upset Annie because all her mother's possessions were meant to go to her. My husband told Annie that it was just one item and she needed to get over it because Amy was entitled to have something too. Annie had brought up that it was the piece her mother wore the most. My husband told her that it was a special gift to give to her sister, that she was being selfish. His ex-wife told her that her mother would want
Someone as special as your sister.
to have a piece of her as well. Annie never got over it. She tried to take it from Amy and was punished. The last time she saw any of them, she told them all to buzz off. Amy still has the necklace too. She doesn't even take care of it and talks about it as if her dad bought it for her. I was shocked. I never would have expected my husband to be that way. He was very unapologetic about it and told me Annie would have to get over it someday. I told him he should be ashamed of himself, that he should have allowed Annie's mother's possessions to be hers, to do with as she chose, that Amy did not give a crap about his late wife or the significance of these items, but Annie would have. I told him he will be incredibly lucky if his daughter ever speaks to him again, and I would not blame her if she never did. He was furious I judged him. His family said I should take my husband's side over his daughter, who I don't even know, except for the nephew and niece who told the whole story, because they also think my husband did a messed up thing. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Your husband doesn't understand it. He likely lost Annie forever, her love and respect, and his place as her father in her heart. It was not the necklace itself, but the meaning of the necklace. Love, respect, care, her mom's memory. I'd be more concerned about it if I were OP. Her husband hid the part that showed he was responsible for the disastrous relationship with his daughter and made it seem like it was his daughter's problem. I don't doubt that in his mind he thinks he didn't do anything wrong, but that speaks loudly about who he is and how he resolves things. Also, the "you should support me because I'm your husband" is total crap. I hope you don't have kids. That'll make the inevitable divorce a lot trickier. OP. Not with my husband. I have 2 adult kids, but the divorce won't affect them really. Am I the jerk for not asking my friend before giving away a chair from our table? I, male 46, was out on Saturday with my friend, female 38, at a pub. There were 4 chairs at our table. One guy at the table behind ours turns around and asks us if they can have one of our empty chairs. I get eye contact with him because he is in direct line of sight. Since clearly, to me, there were 2 available chairs at our table, I answer, yes, that is okay, without asking my friend about it. My friend then confronts me about the fact that I did not ask her before answering him. She said that by doing so, then I am answering for her and she doesn't like it. Even though there were 2 empty chairs at our table, she feels that I should have asked her if it was okay before answering him, and that would have been good communication between us. She said that there could be many reasons why maybe she wouldn't agree to giving away one of the chairs. Like for example, that I wouldn't know if maybe she had invited other people to come and join us without me knowing about it. It was late in the evening and only the 2 of us had spent the evening together. I felt that the situation was obvious and that the answer would be obvious, so I didn't even think about asking her first. I think I might be the jerk because by not asking my friend first, that I'm not considerate enough about if it's okay with her. Am I the jerk? Edit. Full story. There was an instance a couple of weeks back where a guy wanted to join our table and I said, that's okay, without asking her. She confronted me then, and in that instance I was very understanding and could understand her point of view very well. I even commented, it will not happen again. This time she commented, again, you are answering for me. I said to her that I thought this instance was a very different type of situation and shouldn't be compared like that. She did not have any understanding about the situations being different. And there was another time where she suspected that I had answered for her about if and when we were joining a friend. I demonstrated that I had in fact not answered for her by showing her the text message I had sent to our friend. You're the jerk. How hard is it to ask her before speaking on her behalf? Why is it that so many of you guys get your kicks from trying to act all mighty and powerful? Honestly, I don't even know why she's wasting her time with someone like you. If I'm out on a date and dude tries to answer for me, pull out my chair or any of that 50s crap, it's a huge red flag and I know I won't be letting him take me out again after this. I do run the bill up as high as possible though, since we're already there. When will you guys learn that it's time to stop acting like cavemen? She deserves so much better. You're the jerk. This sounds like an ongoing issue with you that she has made you aware of more than once. It's something that bothers her either because of bad past experiences or it's just a pet peeve, but it is simple enough to just ask her quickly before answering something that affects both of you. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his friend? Please let us know.
Sometimes I think people in these stories will be friends with just about anyone.
Wasn't made redundant like everyone else in the company, so kept showing up to work until the end to do nothing. This story is from June 2012, a week or so short of 10 years ago. I have generalized my exact work for anonymity. This story takes place in Australia, where we have very stringent laws around employment, firing, hiring, redundancies, maternity, etc. Little bit of background. I had started working for this particular company in March 2011. I was hired basically on the spot once I demonstrated my knowledge of the product that I would be working on, and started 2 days later because of a deadline that had to be met. I had a very specific contract for what I did. I was thrown in the deep end. A sleepless 7 days followed, but by the end, I managed to do a decent job on the first of many products. 2 months after I started, my direct boss, general manager, was let go and not really replaced properly, but a consultant took over their responsibilities. I should also add that majority of operations were in Australia, while a smaller team operated in the UK, which is also where the CEO was based, despite 80 to 90% of products coming out of our office. Towards the third quarter of 2011, the CEO's contract ended and not renewed, so the hunt began for a new CEO who was eventually found and began working also in the UK location. After a very busy 2011, hiring approximately 30 new employees and launching a bunch of new products, business was booming. Until the second week of January 2012. By this point, upper management couldn't stay on top of everything, bringing in the COO of the parent company to oversee operations in Australia, because we had a lot going on, but the CEO was based in the UK and new. At this point, we had a group meeting where we learned the future of the company and that operations in Australia would cease on June 30th, 2012, end of financial year in Australia. This was followed by management explaining that everyone, except a handful of people, would be made redundant with payouts. The handful who would remain will instead be made redundant after finishing their project at the end of 2012. So over the next 5 months, as operations were slowly winding up and people started to exit the company, I'd lined up a few job interviews. One of these was my dream job, based in Europe, working in the exact field I wanted to be in. I kept this quiet, telling only a handful of my closest friends at my still current job. The recruitment process took quite a few weeks, many late-night Skype interviews, general chats. It was a big job and a massive interview process. And towards the end of May, I'm still in the running for this dream job. And by this point, pretty much everyone knows, wishing me luck. Around comes the start of June, and everyone starts to get their redundancy letters, giving them 28 days of official notice outlining their pay schedules and all legal entitlements. When I say everyone, I mean everyone except me. I find this very strange, but quickly realize it's because if I hand in my notice, I won't be entitled to a payout, and the company gets to save a few $1,000s. This is where my malicious compliance kicks in. I keep quiet and don't say anything. By about the second week of June, I find out that I didn't get my dream job, and I tell one other person, but make sure they don't tell anyone else. Fast forward to the last week of June, and now there's just 7 employees, including me, left in the office, alongside the GM, COO, and CFO. Everyone except me has packed up their desks, and at this point, just showing up to basically be social and reminisce. On the second last day, I run into the COO. Remember, he was from the parent company, brought in to oversee the winding up of operations, next to my desk, and he goes, "You must be saddened that tomorrow is the last day." Casually, I respond with, "Oh, is it? I know it'll be quiet, but I didn't realize it's my last day." He takes a closer look at my desk, still not packed up, has the most confused look on his face and responds with, "Yeah, it's everyone's last day. Why wouldn't it be your last?" "Oh, I never got a redundancy letter." At this point, I can see the expression on his face go from, "Huh?" to, "Oh no." In the hope that I would get a different job and resign so I don't get redundancy entitlements, among everything else going on between the GM, COO, and CFO, they forgot to issue me an official redundancy notice. At this point, he realizes all this and goes, "Oh, come and see me in my office in 30 minutes. Half an hour later, I go to his office. He's sitting there with the CFO by his side, but also kind of behind him. There are a few papers on the desk. I sit down and he starts, "Sorry we didn't do this properly at an earlier point, but here is all your redundancy paperwork. The first piece of paper is the official letter." I pick it up, start reading, and the first thing that catches my eye is the date. It had been backdated to 27 days previously. Now this is the 2-copy letter that needs to be signed by both employer and employee. I put it down and go, "That's not today's date." He gets flustered and responds with, "Sorry, we forgot to get it to you, but the notice was issued on that day." Me: "It might have been issued then, but this is the first time I'm seeing it, and you'll note it hasn't been signed by me." Him: "Yes, but you knew this was coming." Me: "I did, but I assumed I'd be retained for longer because I wasn't given official notice." Him: "What do you want us to do now?" Me: "Put today's date on it and I'll sign it." Him: "But legally, we need to wrap up operations before the end of the month. We can't do that." Me: "You could try to fire me instead, but I don't think Fair Work Commission would be satisfied with your reason of me not wanting to sign a falsified redundancy letter." By this point, he's very flustered. Meanwhile, I'm just laughing in my head. Him: "Okay, let me change this for you." He disappears, comes back with another copy with the correct date. "Okay, here you go." Me: "I'm not signing this yet." Him: "Why not?" Me: "Well, I've got 28 more days of legal employment now, which means I'm owed an extra day and a bit in annual leave in my final pay schedule." He looks at the CFO, and the CFO looks at him and nods in agreement. He changes my payout schedule, adding another day of annual leave to it, prints it out and hands it to me. I carefully look over everything. It's all in order now. I sign the paperwork, we both get copies. Him: "So, what will you be doing here for the next 28 days? Me: "Nothing. I'm not coming back after today." Him: "But you are legally employed for another 4 weeks. We can't be paying you for nothing. You should help out the IT guy and pack up some boxes." Me: "There's nothing in my contract about packing up boxes, so I won't be doing that. Also, if you read my contract, it says I'm employed to work on this one specific project only, and any other outside work of this needs to be agreed on separately. And since you sold my project to the competition yesterday, and it's no longer at this company, I have no further contractual obligations to fulfill." By this point, the CFO is barely holding in his laughter. Him: "Well, that's not fair. We have to pay you an extra month for nothing." Me: "That's not my problem. My contractual obligations have been fulfilled. I'm going to pack up and go home at 5 p.m. Him: "Okay, please make sure it's not before 5 p.m. I get back to my desk and pack it up in less than 5 minutes, put all my personal belongings in a box, and just sit around doing nothing. One of my colleagues, who is remaining for a few more months, comes and asks me, "What was all that about?" I explain everything in detail. He lets out the biggest booming laugh, goes to his office, closes the door, and continues laughing. 15 minutes later, the CFO comes over and goes, "You don't have to stay until the end of the day. You can take off whenever you want." And this is the story of how I got an extra month's pay due to management's incompetence. Am I the jerk for calling mother-in-law out on her allergies? For as long as I've been with my husband, mother-in-law has been claiming she's deathly allergic to egg, ginger, and she can't have a lot of salt in her meals. So I've been actively avoiding these ingredients in meals I cook. She's even had an allergic reaction to foods she suspects have those ingredients. About a week ago, I hosted a dinner for sister-in-law's birthday and made sister-in-law her favorite salted caramel mousse. It's easily one of the best things I make. This recipe has taken me years to make it perfectly, and I keep it a huge secret, but it has a lot of egg and a lot of salt in it. So keeping in line with mother-in-law's dietary requirements, I make her a simple chocolate caramel mousse with no eggs or salt in it. Dessert rocks around, and I bring out a tray of the salted caramel mousse, put it on the table, and tell mother-in-law, "I'll be back with your mousse in a second. Don't eat this one, it's salted caramel." I go to the kitchen, come back, and mother-in-law has already taken a salted caramel mousse, which was meant for me, and is shoveling it down her face as quickly as possible. I yell, "No, mother-in-law, it has egg and salt in it." She keeps eating and says, "I know, but everyone always says it's so nice and I wanted to try it. A little bit won't hurt." She devours the entire mousse, which wasn't a small portion, and asks if there's any more because it was so yummy. I tell her no, there isn't any more. But what's going on? I thought she was allergic to those ingredients. She tells me, well, she's technically not allergic, but she doesn't like the taste of egg. It makes her sick, so she just tells people she's allergic, and that way people don't make her food with those ingredients. She still eats cakes, pies, etc., where she can't taste the ingredients. She just doesn't like to eat them if she can taste them. I tell her she shouldn't say she's allergic if she's not. There's a big difference between not liking something and being allergic to something. I've always gone out of my way to avoid those ingredients in her food and even purchase separate bowls and spoons to cook her food in order to avoid cross-contamination. I've been substituting ingredients for years to ensure that I'm not feeding her something she's allergic to. She laughs and says it's not a big deal. Lots of people do it. She also told me I'm being a drama queen. I told her it is a big deal. She could have just told me she didn't like it. It would have saved me a fortune in substituting ingredients or making separate meals. Everyone at the table agreed that claiming to have an allergy when you're not allergic is a jerk thing to do. She sent me a message yesterday saying that I shouldn't have called her out in front of everyone. Now, no one will take her seriously when she says she's allergic. I replied with, "Well, you're not allergic to them, so it doesn't really matter, does it?" She texted my husband that she's not coming over unless I apologize to her for calling her out in front of everyone because I made her feel bad. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. She lied, got caught in that lie. She ate the moose in front of everyone, then gets all upset that you called her out on her lie? And now she wants you to apologize? For what? I'm sorry you got caught lying? Not the jerk. Your mother-in-law, on the other hand, is a huge jerk. This undermines everyone who has a real food allergy. It's expensive and time-consuming to accommodate, and for some people, food safety is critical. He or she just claims allergy to have her preferences met wherever she goes, and she will pick and choose when the allergy excuse suits her occasion. Not okay. For anyone who has an actual life-threatening allergy, she deserves to be called out. Would I be the jerk if I leave for a hotel until he gets back? My husband has a bad habit of springing things on me last minute and expecting me to roll with it. He often claims he just found out about it, but when pushed, will admit that things have been in the works for a long time and he just didn't notice or neglected to inform me, etc. One recurring surprise has to do with his work. He tends to spring work trips or events on me last minute and or will modify trips already in process to extend them, change the terms, etc. In isolation, it might not be a huge deal, but we have kids that I'm left to take care of, and this is the biggest factor for me. He frequently leaves his relatives behind at the house with me. I do not like this. I'm very introverted and private, and while I recognize he likes having his family around, and I do my best to make peace with that while he is around, I find it unreasonable to leave them behind with me time and time again while he's off traveling. Most especially because he knows I value my space, don't particularly get along with his relatives, and because over time it has become such a consistent thing that we've had huge fights about it, so he has no way to pretend he thinks I'm okay with it. Fast forward to this week. He has multiple relatives coming in from out of town. This has been in the works for a month or so, and they intend to stay for a prolonged period of time. I've had some nerves about this for the above-mentioned reasons, but have been doing my best to be supportive of it because I know how much family means to him, and at least when he's here with them, there is a decently comfortable dynamic. There was also no mention of him having any upcoming travel, so I felt somewhat at ease, until the day before they were scheduled to arrive. While talking, he suddenly brings up how he'll be away next week, just a few days after they arrive. He first said he just found out, but when I said it's unreasonable for his work to demand he leave on such short notice, he confessed it was planned a month ago. He swears he just missed the invite, but given his history, I'm betting he just didn't want to tell me. So now he's about to leave me with virtually no notice with a number of his relatives, most of whom I don't even know. And the one relative I do know well, I do not get along with. I told him if he leaves me like this, I'm going to a hotel while he's gone. He responded that I would offend his relatives by doing so, and therefore I can't. I'm tired of being pushed into uncomfortable situations, and I'm considering making this my hill to die on and leaving anyways. Clearly, just talking to him about me not being okay with this pattern is going nowhere, and I don't see how it's reasonable that he keep backing me into uncomfortable situations. But he is right that it's obviously going to look shady at best and rude at worst if I just leave. But given that I was bamboozled into this situation to begin with, does that really make me the jerk? Not the jerk. You contact the relatives and tell them that unfortunately his job has made a last-minute change and hubby isn't going to be here. They need to cancel the trip or make alternative sleeping arrangements. Put your foot down. He knows what he's doing. OP should leave before the day they're supposed to arrive and hubby is supposed to leave with phone switched off. That would leave hubby in the position of either canceling the trip or calling his relatives, if not both. Why should she be the one who carries the bad news? Not the jerk. Make this your hill to die on and go to the hotel. Look, you're going to get a lot of comments here about red flags, etc. I'm not going there because it's not part of this post. Assuming your husband is otherwise a great and respectful partner, then I get it. Everyone has their totally selfish streak, a blind spot that is just so frustrating. As an imperfect partner ourselves, we cut it some slack, but you are allowed to reach a breaking point. He triple whammied you. He invited family to stay for a prolonged trip, knowing you don't love it. He deliberately lied to you about his work travel, which you have previously asked him not to do, and he continues to do. And now he wants to leave you alone in a situation where you are viscerally uncomfortable, that he himself created. Stand your ground, and when your husband says his family will be offended, explain that they will be, but that you expect them to be less so after he tells them that he has a long history of lying to you and springing things on you at the last minute, that you have expressed this to him many times and he did it again. And now you are understandably upset, and they are paying the price for his behavior. The truth shall set you free. He just needs to man up and take the hit.
Karen tries to steal my boyfriend while on our vacation. So my friends and I are going on a trip next month to Miami, Florida. We've been planning it for about a month now, and originally it was going to be a float trip within our state, and with 16 people we go to college with. Before everyone screeches about the lockdown, we've all had our shots. One of my friends in particular, Jay, has a very specific work schedule. We worked around this and got days of the week that are less convenient for the majority because we wanted to include her. She refuses to take off work for the trip despite going on multiple week-long vacations with other people since April. Still though, we did our best to accommodate her. On New Year's, we all stayed on campus for the break, so her, myself, 2 friends, and my boyfriend, A, all spent the night together drinking and playing games in my apartment since my roommate had gone home. That night, she made a passing comment about how she thought my boyfriend was hot and she would love for him to be her New Year's kiss, and I chalked it up to drunken confessions and ignored it since she hadn't made any moves. At one point, she did fall into his lap, but he removed her quickly. Now for this trip, we had to seek out accommodations. After changing the initial float trip because I and our other friend, S, wanted to go to Florida, we downsized our group to just me, S, J, A, and A's friend. We were looking at a 3-bedroom apartment on Airbnb with enough beds to have everyone sleeping comfortably. While discussing sleeping arrangements with S and J, J decided to half-joke about how she wanted to sleep in the same room as A, and that I wouldn't be mad since we've gone on breaks to see other people before. Note, A and I have been dating for 3 years at this point. We've broken up to see other people once before in our first year when we went on summer break because our hometowns are too far away to see each other. We were 18 and 19 at the time and haven't done it again since. I expressed discomfort at this joke and she kept brushing it off, but I really don't trust her. While talking with S privately, she also said it was a bit weird. I ended up shifting the dates of our stay and plane tickets by 1 day, which would prevent Jay from being able to attend due to her work schedule. At first, I just said it was because these were cheaper dates, but she seems to have picked up immediately that it was done because of what she said. She's now calling me a manipulative jerk. S said it was a bit unexpected, but she understands why I did it as well as why Jay is mad. A has no idea because we haven't involved him in the situation. He just knows the new dates and is fine with them. Am I the jerk? Karen keeps dropping her kids off at my place for me to babysit even after I told her not to. I, 30 female, live with my husband and my pets. Unfortunately, both me and my hubby are infertile, so no kids, and instead we help out with my brother and sister-in-law's kids, who are 4 and 1. I'm a freelance web developer, but I work remotely from my home, and the timing is very flexible, hence why I'm able to divert more care towards my nieces. My brother and sister-in-law make just about enough to cut even and can't exactly afford exorbitant childcare costs and would rather allocate their funds to the kids' medical and school fees. I've been babysitting these kids ever since the oldest was born, and now I also handle the care of the younger one. However, recently, something really dreadful happened. That is, I lost one of my closest friends, and in a really bad way too. Don't want to divulge many details. I've been in a really bad place since then, and the whole emotional fatigue has made me not even want to attend to work, which is why I specifically took a 2-week leave to rest and come to terms with my emotions. Sadly, my brother, feigning sympathy at first, said, "Get some rest," and then did the exact opposite by dropping off my nieces when I specifically told him I need some time for myself. He and my sister-in-law then countered, saying that looking after my nieces would help me take my mind off of things, and that it was too short of a notice. The thing is, I barely have any energy usually when the kids are over. I also take charge of the cooking, cleaning up after the younger one. I have no such energy to look after them. Like as of now, I can barely even attend to my own needs. It's also a safety issue. The kids need constant monitoring, especially with my younger niece. Now my brother and sister-in-law are threatening me, saying that if I'm not willing to babysit for the next 2 weeks, I should refund them monetarily so that they can find childcare because of the short notice.
I don't understand. Was I supposed to predict my friend's demise or something? Looks like my only option is to pay them back monetarily for the childcare costs to lay them off my back. My husband thinks it's cruel of them to make me pay, but my brother says I'm being selfish and only thinking everything revolves around my problems. I'm really torn and burned out from all of this. I just need a break. I did lash out on them for calling me selfish, and I've yet to apologize. Do provide judgment on if they are fair. If so, then I'd be willing to compensate them. Edit. Sorry for not including this in the post. I do not get paid to watch my nieces. I have volunteered since my first niece was born because of my flexible work hours. Thank you for the kind words and judgment, by the way. I'm reading through all of it. Grateful to all of you. Not the jerk, they are way out of line. You gave them the equivalent of $25,000 plus in childcare for free, and they are demanding you pay when you need to take a break? What if you got sick and went to the hospital? They would expect you to pay them then also? And your arrangement, if it's no longer working for you, you have been more than generous. Well, who do you agree with? OP or her brother and his wife? Please let us know.
Sometimes you give someone an inch and they'll take a mile. Don't give them a dime.
Boss did not like the look of the bulk mailing stamp, told me to remove it. Cost the company over $220,000. Back in the 1980s, I worked for a sporting goods company as a catalog designer. Small company, privately owned. I was the entire advertising department. I created 4 catalogs a year. These were responsible for most of our mail order sales, pre-internet, to the tune of around $700,000 a year. We sent the catalogs via bulk mail using a mailing service. This let us send them for a much discounted price. To do this required the use of a bulk mail permit and placing the permit info on the mailing area of the catalog. Technically, it's called a fiche. Enter new boss. We'll call him Ron. I was number 1, the only one in my department. For some reason, the company owner hired Ron as a favor to a friend. From day one, he was micromanaging, questioning everything, and messing up my very tight schedule. This was before computers were common. Everything was by hand, literally typing out copy and reducing it on a photocopier to fit. Developing the photo film myself, making prints, etc. The actual printer had to add screens to the photos so that they'd print, burn metal plates, and so on. All time-consuming and expensive. Deadlines could not be missed, so I was stuck with several 16-hour days come crunch time. I was complaining to the owner, but he really couldn't care less. I really wanted to stick it to Ron, and the opportunity presented itself. Constant threats of, "My way or you're fired," were getting to me. The latest pre-summer catalog was done. Summer was our big season. I had to give him my mock-up, photocopied sheets stapled together, of the final catalog for his approval. A new step added after he demanded it. He looked at it and sent it back with several pointless revisions, and a note to remove that ugly permit box because it was not needed. Where he worked previously stuffed their mailers in envelopes. The envelopes had the fiche, but their mailer did this last step. I simply asked him to initial the changes as this was the final approved version and was going to be on the printer the next day. There was no time to check it again, so he did. I knew it would be a total mess and something I never would have done in the past. 50,000 catalogs printed and shipped directly to the mailer. The day they arrive at the mailer, the boss gets a call from the sales rep. "We can't mail your catalogs." Boss storms into my area of the building and is literally screaming. Ron is now upset and yelling at me, joined by the boss. Their veins are bulging as they're screaming. Minimum 2-week delay, wasted money, lost sales. I explained what happened, the threat to fire me, and showed the owner the changes to the final copy, initialed by Ron. He was going to give Ron a second chance until the bill came in from the printer. They had to stamp 50,000 catalogs by hand. We had to rent their permit since that's what was on their stamp. Rental and labor was almost $8,000. Adjusted for inflation, that's $20,000. Plus, our early summer sales boost was off by almost $50,000 from previous years, or $200,000 adjusted for inflation. Ron was fired. I was left alone after that. Am I the jerk for telling my husband I'm not ready for his family to meet our new son? My husband, 33 male, and I, 32 female, just welcomed our second kid 2 months ago. We also have a 3-year-old daughter. This pregnancy was a lot more difficult for me than my first. I had complications and had to take an early maternity leave from work because my doctor recommended bed rest. Thankfully, everything with the delivery went fine and our son is healthy and happy. In order to help while I was on bed rest, my mom came to stay with us. She came when I was about 8 months pregnant, right when I went into bed rest. She also stayed after the birth and just recently moved back home a week or so ago. It was so helpful having her here, and I'm forever grateful for it. However, my husband could not have been happier to see her leave. He expressed to me numerous times that he feels my mom is overbearing and that she inserts herself into every situation under the guise of helping. He says he felt marginalized in both his roles as husband and father the entire time she was here. I will admit that my mom can be very protective and almost overcaring, if that makes sense. She has a strong motherly instinct, and I can kind of see how it would rub my husband the wrong way. I was not in a position to fight either one of them on anything, so I told my husband he's just going to have to deal with it and that it's short term. He was so happy to see her leave, I'm surprised he didn't throw himself a little party. Now that my mom is gone, he wants his parents to come visit. They live far enough away that they would have to fly here. I told my husband that I'm not ready for visitors and that now that I am more recovered, I want to spend time with just my family and bond. Instead of being supportive of my needs, he took offense and pretty much threw it in my face that I was okay with my mom being here for 3 months, and now I won't even let his family meet their grandkid. He accused me of having double standards and even asked if I hate his parents, which I absolutely do not. I just want to spend some time with my family before having anyone else come visit. My husband argued that his parents would be getting a hotel anyway, so it's not like they would be staying with us. He just wants them to meet his new son. I told him that I am not forbidding his family from ever meeting our son, but that now is not a good time. He asked when a good time would be, and I told him that I will tell him when I'm ready for them to come. He told me that he's tired of living his life based completely on my timelines and needs. He said that at some point, what he wants should at least matter a little bit, instead of me constantly dictating the terms of our life. I told him that when he experiences a difficult pregnancy and birth, then he can dictate things. But until then, my needs matter more than his wants. He's now barely speaking to me. He will do things I ask and help with whatever I need, but it's like he's on autopilot and sulking because he can't get what he wants. You're the jerk. You will admit that your mom can be very overprotective and almost overcaring? That sounds like enabler speak for, my mom completely steamrolled my husband while she was here, and I'm just going to ignore his valid complaints about that because I don't want to hear them. You do not get to plead that you need time with your immediate family when you're completely shutting out the wants and needs of your partner and establishing that family, especially if the reason you need that time is because of a situation you set up and refuse to allow him to do anything to manage in a way that would have made it more bearable for him. If you're not going to allow a visit from his family now, and I'll be honest, I see no good reason for you to forbid that when they're not even staying with you, you need to be willing to go to counseling with him to figure out how these situations are going to be handled in the future. Because he's right, the double standard is real and it's ugly. I'm going to try to be as graceful here as I can because I also had a difficult pregnancy last year that put me in the hospital for 2 weeks, bed rest, and then a very painful C-section that has led me to never wanting another biological kid. So yes, I understand. But you're the jerk. Your husband is an equal parent to your son. His concerns and wants matter just as much as yours. He isn't asking for his family to stay like your mother did, and isn't even asking that you accommodate room and board for them. He only wants his parents to meet your shared son for what I'm guessing is a few days. I do get wanting your own little family time because my husband and I did that too. But you're treating his wishes to have his family meet your son like it's a burden. Frankly, the whole post makes it sound as though you see him as a burden. He's not sulking because he can't get what he wants. He's realizing that you don't care for his wants and needs like he's an equal partner or a parent. It's heartbreaking. I'd like to kindly add, and I truly mean kindly, that it might be a good idea to get yourself into therapy for possible postpartum depression and/or anxiety. Even if you don't have either, it can only benefit you both to work through whatever is making you not want his family to meet your son. And maybe it can help you to extend more empathy to your husband. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know.
Yowza kanowza. I can't wait to read the comments we get on this one.
Manager told me I was fired as a joke, so I quit. I worked for a car dealership as a lot partner. I had gotten into an accident that totaled my car right as I was purchasing a house, which led to a predicament because you don't want to buy a new car while you're paying a house. Shortly after buying the house, I found a different job in a field I love. So I put in my 2 weeks notice, and then I went and bought from a different dealership because my wife wanted a specific car that my dealership did not sell. I also knew how slimy the one I worked for was. A few days after the purchase of both house and car, one of the sales managers asked me if I was ready to buy a car from him. I didn't disclose the fact to anyone that I bought from a different dealer. I informed him I already had bought one, so he looks at me in the most serious face and asks if I wanted to pack my things, basically because I wasn't loyal to this dealership. Knowing I already had a better job that was able to start me immediately, I said sure. So he immediately started laughing and told me he was joking and how they would never fire anyone for going somewhere else. but I already knew a few people that had gotten fired for that exact reason. I told him I don't appreciate being fired as a joke, because first, I do have a 1.5-year-old, and if I didn't have a job lined up, it could have seriously hurt me financially. But I ended up leaving feeling relieved because this was not a good job. The funny thing is, he called me about 30 to 45 minutes after I had left because I had left keys to multiple brand new trucks in my desk that had to have the plastic removed and get parked. Turns out, since he fired me, they made him take care of the stuff. I'm now fully enjoying my new job with the best bosses I've ever had. I know I probably took it too far, but I don't regret it. Edit. There were a few good sales managers that really cared, and I don't want to throw them under the bus, but the job got too tiring because of the bad ones. Am I the jerk for refusing to house my wife's daughter after she refused to house mine? My wife and I have been married for 10 years, second marriage for both of us. I have a 19-year-old daughter from my previous marriage, while she has a 26-year-old daughter with her late husband. We both agreed to not discipline each other's kids and that we wouldn't be a parental figure for either of them. Last year, my daughter left for college. A senior from her same university was offering a room for cheapish, so she decided to move in, and aside from when she was at class, my daughter was home 100% of the time, and the roommate for some reason was mad at this. She ended up making my daughter feel bad and uncomfortable to the point she decided to move out earlier than she had to. She asked me for help since I'm the one who lives closer. My ex and I asked my wife if my daughter could come live with us for a month while we got her another place. She said no, because for her, my daughter was running from being an adult, that we shouldn't coddle her, that she was acting like a baby, and that mommy and daddy shouldn't fix everything. We had to move faster and got her another place, but it put a stain on our relationship, and I confess that I didn't feel that was okay. Now, her daughter got married 2 years ago and recently found out that her husband cheated on her. My wife decided she should come live with us indefinitely and that we would fully support her because she was a stay-at-home mom. I put a stop to this and I said that we wouldn't do that, or at least I wouldn't, and that the max she could stay here was 2 weeks while she got another place. My wife flipped on me, saying this is not my choice since it's our house, and I said that that's the same reason it's not her choice either. She was the one who brought up my daughter's need and said that I was willing to house her and that I was playing favorites. I said I asked for a month, not indefinitely, and that yeah, I thought it wasn't fair she was expecting me to drop everything for her daughter while mine was just acting like a baby. She called me a jerk, said this was totally different, then went to our room and hasn't come out yet. She refused to eat, and I'm wondering if she's right. Not the jerk. Either do marriage counseling or divorce. Your wife was cruel by refusing to house your daughter for a few weeks. Not the jerk. She's let you know exactly how she feels about your kid. Believe her. She does not care about her, thinks she's spoiled, and doesn't like you doing what most decent parents would do. Now she expects you to bend over backwards for her kid. Not the jerk. The hypocrisy of your wife is stunning. Her daughter can live in your house indefinitely, but your daughter cannot stay for 2 weeks? Tell her there is one standard. Adult kids will be helped or they won't be helped. There is no, my daughter gets help, but yours doesn't. Customer begs for special treatment after hearing we're sold out of an item. I work at a family-style sit-down with a bar. It's the end of the night, which means I'm ready to lose it on any customer who even gives me the slightest bit of grief. A group of 3 came in to order food and drinks at our bar. Customer: I'd like to get a gin and tonic and some of your wings. Me: Sure, we're sold out of our regular breaded wings, but you can get the non-breaded ones. Is that okay with you? I'm internally begging this lady to please just be okay with it, which is the normal thing to do. But she proceeded to surpass every expectation I had for her. Karen: You're sold out? Goodness, how busy have you guys been tonight? That isn't fair for your paying customers. Trying not to explain to her that every customer is a paying customer, I try to smooth things over. Me: Yeah, it's been super busy, but we still have the classic ones available. Can I get some of those started for you? Customer: I'm actually wondering if you can do something for me. Because you're sold out of the breaded ones, can I have the classic ones in all flats and half off? I think that's only fair, seeing as you're sold out. My jaw dropped internally. Me: Ma'am, I'm sorry. I don't think I can do that for you with the flats. I'm happy to get the wings started, and I can't take any money off, unfortunately. We're just sold out, but I'm more than happy to give you the replacement. Customer: No, I don't think you understand what I'm asking for. I'm just offering to do a compromise because I can't get what I want. Me: Again, ma'am, I'm sorry, but I can't do this for you. The customer gives a huge sigh. Well, if you can't do this for me, can you get someone who can? Stunned, I walked over to my manager, who burst out laughing once I told her what the predicament was. She goes over to the customer and basically repeats what I told her. As I watch, the customer starts getting visibly upset and says,
Well, I'm going to be taking my business elsewhere if this is the case.
My manager says with a huge smile on her face, "Well, go ahead. I hope you have a great night." I was on the floor. For some context, I have severe anemia that requires I get infusions regularly. I pass out regularly from many activities, from cooking to walking. Otherwise, I look like a normal, pale, healthy adult. Recently, I was shopping at that one store with blue shirts that sells it all. I did happen to be wearing a blue shirt at the time, but it was A, more turquoise, less navy, and B, a cami top with spaghetti straps because it was 100 degrees outside. My anemia is bad right now, but this was a necessary trip because kids have to eat. I'm trying to take it slow. There were no scooters when I entered, which I hate taking, but it beats ending up on the floor, so I was trying to be extra careful. I came upon a younger woman with a kid. She was trying to reach up to grab something on a high shelf, and me being taller, I was easily able to grab the item, so I did for her and continued on my way. About 3 aisles over, I felt the fishbowl coming on. My head starts to swim and everything feels like I'm underwater. There was nowhere to sit besides the floor, and it was sit or fall, so I dropped onto the floor, crossed legs, and put my head in my lap, waiting for the worst to pass. I can hear someone clearing their throat nearby and kinda wave my hand in their direction to signal I'm okay, waiting for the world to refocus. The throat clearing sound happens again and again. I finally lift my head to see this petite lady with white hair staring at me. I croak out, "I'm fine, just give me a moment," but I was mistaken in thinking her intention was to check on my welfare.
It is extremely unprofessional to sit on the job. I need some help.
She was holding a cane and started smacking the ground with each word. I looked up at her, unsure if my head was still fuzzy or she just really said what she said. At this point, some other customers and an employee had started to approach to check on me. I told her politely that I was shopping and not an employee, but she pointed her cane at me, cut me off mid-sentence, and told me that she was sick of the younger generation always making excuses. My eyes rolled so far back in my head, I'm surprised I didn't pass out. The actual employee leaned down and asked me if I needed medical assistance. I explained to him that I had a medical condition, that there had been no electric scooters, but I would manage, I just needed a moment. He got on a walkie-talkie, and I heard him say something about the scooter, but the lady started again, so I missed what was being said exactly. She looked at him and demanded he get my boss, as she wanted to give him an earful of my behavior issues. At this point, I think she was the only oblivious person in the aisle, and we had an audience of like 10. 2 other people had leaned down to ask if I wanted to get up or stay put, did I need water, etc. The employee tells the lady that a manager's on his way, but that I do not work there. She starts ranting again, something about people lying for each other. At this point, I'm embarrassed by the crowd and just ready to leave. Manager comes out and she starts ranting at this guy, tells him I was personal shopping for another customer, and when she approached me, I just sat down on the floor like an entitled spoiled brat. She then launches into a rant about how they had no electric scooters when she came in and how personal shoppers would be a benefit to her. Now, I didn't have any glamorous moment of telling her off. It isn't really my way. But I did get to enjoy her face when an electric cart was driven up by an employee and she got to see me ride off in it. The manager still explaining I had a medical condition as she began yelling about my youth and entitlement and being a bad employee. She probably still thinks I work there. Am I the jerk for cashing a check that was supposed to bounce? About a month ago, I told my friend how much my husband and I have been struggling after the trucking company he worked for went under. She asked if I'd be willing to babysit her coworker's 2 kids. I hate babysitting, but figured it would be an added benefit for my kids to have their kids to play with. So after talking about it with my husband, I said okay. The arrangement between her coworker and I was that I'd be paid $200 a week for babysitting her son, 31 weeks, and her daughter, who's 3.5. It wasn't much, but with that income, plus what my husband has been bringing in, doing Uber and Lyft, it would keep our heads above water. The first week went smooth. She paid me in cash for the whole week up front. The second week, she said she could only pay me half on Monday and the other half on Thursday because she had an unexpected bill come out. We've all been there, so I said okay, and she did end up paying me that Thursday like she said. The third week was when the real problem started. She said her baby's dad couldn't pay child support that week, so she could only afford to do $50 that week and she'd pay the rest the following week, along with what she'd normally be paying me. I was annoyed, but wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt. What really upset me, though, was that she brought her kids with literally nothing but her daughter's tablet and formula for the baby. No diapers, change of clothes, no snacks, nothing. She said she'd reimburse me for the groceries and diapers if I'd cover them just for that week. I kept asking if she was sure she'd be able to pay us back. She said yes, for sure she could pay us back. The next Monday, she wrote me a check for $375. I asked her why she couldn't pay in cash, and she said the money was transferred to her account that morning and that she didn't have time to stop at the bank before dropping her kids off. Okay, cool. At least she was paying. I finished the day with the kids and head to my credit union to deposit the check. It bounced. I tried calling and texting her with no answer. My husband was fuming, and I told him I'd get it worked out the next morning when she brings her kids over. Except she didn't bring her kids. I called again and no answer. The next day, the same, and the next. I took that check to the credit union that Tuesday and Wednesday, and both days it bounced again. Still no word from her. Finally on Thursday, I went in first thing in the morning and tried to cash it, and it worked. That's when she started blowing me up and sending me texts and voicemails that I was a heartless jerk, and how dare I do this to a struggling single mom like that, and she was going to get me for this, etc. Even our mutual friend said I was wrong for doing that, and how the mom was going in on her now, and it was causing a bunch of drama at work. I feel a little bad for doing that, but we had to rearrange our lives and pay to take care of her kids when we didn't have the money. Am I the jerk? I hate that it's now come between my friend and me, but we really needed that money. ETA. I did get charged $20 every time I tried to deposit the check, but my credit union waived those fees after I told them what was going on. And because it was a personal check, they let me keep it to try again. I don't work in baking, so I don't know if that's how it's supposed to work, but that's what they did. ETA 2. I've tried reaching out to figure out how to pay her the $200 for that week, but she must have me blocked because it goes straight to voicemail. So I talked to my friend, and she's picking it up tonight and taking it to work with her tomorrow to give to her. Not the jerk. You needed that money. You had an agreement. The check constituted payment for services you rendered and materials you provided. She's lucky you didn't charge her a bounced check fee for each attempt. Neighbors retaliating for the repercussions of their mistake. So my husband, who's 39, and I, 31 female, bought a major fixer-upper about 3 years ago on a residential street in our small city in New England. Our house has a small driveway, enough for 2 cars to park side by side, which sits directly adjacent to our neighbor's driveway. The house next door is a rental, and until last summer had never changed hands. One hot summer day, my husband and I parked our cars on the street so we could power wash the driveway and clean up some oil stains. At some point, we went in for lunch, and when we came out, there was a couple sitting in their car on our driveway. As we watched, the woman in the passenger seat tossed a cigarette butt onto the driveway. My husband approached them and was basically like, "Hey, can I help you?" They explained that they were there to see the house next door. My husband kindly explained that this was our driveway and that the correct one was just a few feet over. The woman looked at her husband, rolled her eyes, and they moved the car. The next interaction we had with them, I was coming home with 2 toddlers and a load of groceries. I found a moving truck parked diagonally on our drive, back open towards the neighbor's side door, taking up the whole thing. I got the kids in the house and headed over to ask them to move the truck. I didn't want to lug half a dozen bags of groceries half a block to my own house. I was very nice, and again, the wife rolled her eyes and basically said, "You can wait an hour." I was like, "No, I can't, and if you don't get the truck off my property, I'm calling the cops." In retrospect, I kind of regret how I handled it, but it was July, super hot out, and my 2-year-old and 4-year-old were probably destroying my living room while I dealt with this. She huffed but moved the truck, and we went about our day. Since then, it's basically been horrible. The couple has a pair of Chihuahuas who they refuse to leash and who go to the bathroom in our yard constantly. They pick it up about 75% of the time. The wife lets them out without looking, and if my kids are in the yard, I have to pick them up so the dogs don't jump and bark at them. They throw their cigarette butts on our lawn, play loud music while they work on their cars at 10 p.m., and occasionally get in screaming arguments, which we can clearly hear in our home 25 yards away. Last month was the incident which brought the whole situation to a head. Our whole extended family was over for my daughter's 5th birthday dinner. We were eating in the yard and grilling. The kids were playing. Everything was great. Neighbors pull into their driveway. The dogs come running out of the car and come yapping at us. One of them bit my 3-year-old. She required stitches and is absolutely scared. We called the police and the neighbors were ticketed. I believe they had to attend some sort of hearing, and now the dog is gone. I think they had to get it put down. They've basically been doing everything in their power to drive us insane without actually breaking the law. Playing music too loud, leaving their diesel truck idling with the exhaust going right into my garden, loud language when my kids are outside, doggy-doo appearing on our lawn, you name it. I'm done. I want them gone. Please help. Don't grab the staff. She's a black belt. This story took place in the mid-1990s, so I'm a bit fuzzy on the specific details. And of course, names have been changed to protect the innocent as well as the guilty. Onto the story. The characters are me, the manager. We've got cashier, Maria. We've got the grabby customer. And we've got police officers 1 and 2 and the paramedic. Back in my 20s, I worked at a local hardware store that was just down the street from the city university, where I ended up being promoted to store manager. This was my college job. I had a small staff that included several other students, in particular a young lady cashier, Maria, who, aside from being an employee, was also the girlfriend of a friend/classmate of mine, who happened to be the manager of the barbecue restaurant in the same strip mall with us, so I kind of looked out for her. She was the sort of lady who drew attention from her looks and figure, that tended to receive unwanted advances from random customers. This was typically dealt with by a passing comment of, "This is not a dating site," from me to the cashier. We had already worked this out. I wasn't getting after her, I was giving her an escape route. In this shop, the cashier's station was basically a booth with 2 cash registers just at the front door of the store. The break room is in the back room, and you have to walk through the paint department to get to the break room. At her break time, Maria was walking back to the break room to relax and break out her books for class. I was making my rounds through the store, checking inventories, etc., when I heard a polite, "Excuse me?" Some muffled words I couldn't hear. A more irritated, "Excuse me?" Not the kind like, "Please let me pass," but more of like, "What the heck did you just say to me?" Followed by, in quick succession, a scream, a loud oof noise like someone got the wind knocked out of them, a scuffle, a thud, a loud crack, then a lot of unintelligible screaming. I and our floor salesman ran back to the area where the paint shaker was to find a guy we will call Grabby, one of the maintenance staff from the university, laying on the floor, gripping his arm, and yelling how Maria had assaulted him. "Call the paramedics! Call the cops!" Meanwhile, Maria was in shock, just repeating, "Oh my God, I heard him. Please don't fire me." I asked my salesman to call 911 and tend to the guy on the floor. I took Maria back to the office and had her lay out her story for me, knowing that I couldn't capture audio, but I did have very good video of the paint department, as it was a high theft/shoplifting area. The store, being in a strip mall with a popular barbecue joint right next door, happened to have police officers having lunch, so the police response was officers in the store before the salesman could even hang up the phone. Officer 1 was sent back to the office to interview me and Maria. He pulled Maria aside, asked her side of the story. My Grabby, apparently, as she was trying to get him by the aisle, blocked her way and muttered to her in a threatening way that he was going to get her after work, which apparently prompted the louder, annoyed, "Excuse me?" He then proceeded to try to grab her, so she grabbed his wrist, spun, and did one of those over-the-shoulder flips and put him on the ground, when she heard something break, and as soon as the guy got his breath back, he started screaming in pain. Officer 1 had her sit down and then proceeded to take my side of the story. I explained the story as I knew it, what I heard and what I saw, and showed him the videotape evidence, and sure enough, you could clearly see the guy lean in, her face sort of crinkles in an annoyed expression, the grab and the flip. She was clearly in self-defense. At this point, the paramedics were working on the guy. He had a huge lump on his head where he hit the floor, and his arm, the one he grabbed her with, was broken. Apparently, he came down on the tile concrete floor pretty badly. Officer 2 came in to report to Officer 1, who I guess was the higher ranking, I don't know. But he says Grabby said that she grabbed him out of the blue and just flipped him and broke his arm because he wouldn't get out of the way fast enough. Long story short, he ended up escorted to the hospital by police to get his arm set and then arrested. Maria was saying she didn't want to press charges, she already hurt him. However, this type of assault, the charges are automatically here. The fallout for Grabby? He was charged and convicted on all counts through a plea deal. He never went to court as the evidence was pretty overwhelming. He was banned for life from that store, fired from his job at the university, ended up divorced as his wife was not very happy about what he did, and the last we knew, he was a guest of the state for at least 5 years. So at least we never had to testify. I might have left out one critical detail here, somewhat intentionally. Maria was a physical education major and was a black belt. Neighbor demands I pay for her flea treatment. Our dog gets treated monthly with vet-prescribed flea stuff. My neighbor, Jill, treats her cats for fleas with a blend of essential oils and garlic. I dislike Jill, but I've always been courteous to her. I don't argue when she talks about things I don't believe. I restrained my laughter when she told me she cares so deeply about the environment, so she just had to protest at the summit in Glasgow. I didn't even point out the irony in driving 4 hours in a 4x4 to attend. She acts like a veritable Earth Mother, taking every chance to remind us she doesn't use chemicals, boasting she makes her own soap, laundry detergent, deodorant. Good on her. I mean, they don't work, but I applaud her for her efforts nonetheless. Her claims of environmentalism are somewhat undermined by her flying to and from London every fashion season to buy new clothes. We see her as a pretentious hypocrite, claiming to be vegan except when at an all-inclusive resort, claiming to love rescue animals, then paying thousands of pounds for pedigree cats, calling our spaniel a mutt because he came from a rescue charity, so we can't be sure of his origins. Last week, without asking if he was friendly or if it was safe for her 7-year-old to play with him, Jill's youngest kid ran up to my dog and started enthusiastically cuddling and clinging onto him. Luckily, he was well used to our kids, so was very gentle. Jill smiled indulgently. I fought the urge to say dogs with a different nature someone could have gotten hurt. Sunday, Jill came to our door and said that she and the kids are covered in flea bites. I was like, right, thanks for telling me, and went to shut the door when she screeched, "From your mutt." A discussion ensued where she insisted our vet-prescribed flea prevention was inferior to her own mix of oils and garlic. I said, sounds delicious. Jill said she paid £250 to rid her house of fleas. I said, wow, garlic prices have really risen. When she insisted that we pay for the flea treatment, done by a company that uses chemicals by the way, I refused to pay. I reminded her that her kids hadn't even asked to get so close to our dog. She replied, oh well, what was I supposed to do? My sister says it was judgmental of me to reply, parent them. I felt 100% in the right. My wife supports me. My sister is like Jill, but with the actual principle follow-through. She thinks we dislike Jill's lifestyle, but it's her hypocrisy we don't like. But I'm now wondering if I was rude like she says. Well, I know I was, but I feel justified in it. Maybe I should pay half. Am I the jerk for being judgmental, sarcastic, or rude? My sister says I am. Not the jerk. If she loved animals, she'd know garlic is not safe for cats. She's shorting their lifespan by quite a bit. It's late. There are 5 minutes left before we close. The phone rings. I answered the phone right away. The customer asks when the restaurant closes. I say, it's 9:11 now. We need to have everyone out by 10. The lady on the phone says, well, great. I'm just going to walk over now. I'll order takeout when I get there. I quickly tell her, takeout ends at 9:15. I can quickly take your order now, put it in, and we will have it ready when you get here. She agrees. Okay, I'm going to order something I've had before. It was a veggie burger. Great. Was it our avocado? And she is very hungry. I can hear it in her voice. No, it was just a veggie burger. Okay, can I put you on hold for a moment? I believe our only veggie burger at the moment is the avocado impossible, but I can double check for you. Seems impossible right now. Yes, do that. She already sounds smug. I can't quite explain it other than I know she's going to be difficult. She's on hold for about 30 seconds. I am right. The only vegetarian burger is the impossible one, so we can sub a veggie or impossible burger in place of a regular beef patty. I calmly tell her, thank you for holding. If you would not like the avocado burger, we can sub in a veggie burger or an impossible burger in place of any beef patty. Well, that's what I want. And I want it on multigrain bread, like I had it before. They put it on 2 slices of bread on each side, and they didn't charge me extra for it. I pause quickly. I'm honestly not quite sure what to say to what sounds like a lie, and I'm basically alone. Do you understand what I'm saying? She asks very bluntly. Yes, I do. Like they used 4 pieces of bread? I repeat what she said back to her. I think I can do that. Even if my manager tells me I should charge extra for more bread next shift, then I'll know for next time. Yes. Now, what do they usually have on these? The lady asks. I'm not sure. I don't know exactly what you want. She still has yet to clarify what burger she's going off of. Well, vegetables. What vegetables do they put on the burger? Like lettuce, tomato? She's talking to me like I'm 5. It's different for every burger. But yes, we do have lettuce and tomato, and we can add that to any burger.
I want that. I want lettuce, tomato, no onion. I want that sauce you guys have too. Also, I don't want iceberg lettuce. I'm healthy. I only eat romaine. Or what's that other stuff you guys have?
I glance at the clock. It's 9:14. I'm off in 15 minutes, and I'm not supposed to ring in anything else past 9:15. I'm sorry, miss, do you have access to the internet? What you're describing really doesn't exist, and it's getting quite late. If you're able to check out our menu online, you can see what we have. I tell her as nicely as I can.
I don't have a computer next to me. She's snapping. Honestly, I don't see what's so difficult about this. You said you close at 10.
Yes, but travel and takeout closes at 9:15. I explained calmly. If you would like, you can come tomorrow.
What am I going to do? Eat a burger at 7 a.m.? Is there anyone else I can speak to? There has to be someone. This is ridiculous.
No, I'm the only person working takeout tonight, and I need to clean up by myself. That's gonna take a while.
Then I want to speak to your manager.
My manager has gone home. You can phone them tomorrow, though.
Good, I will.
Respectfully, don't order things that don't exist 5 minutes before closing. Please just look at our menu first. I don't mind subbing a veggie patty in for a beef patty, and I don't mind subbing in bread for a bun. We can add lettuce and tomato to whatever burger you want. Modifications are fine. Making up a completely new item is not, especially not 5 minutes before closing and 15 minutes before I'm supposed to be going home. Am I the jerk for ruining a Father's Day celebration with my bad attitude? I'm female, and I turned 30 last Saturday. I haven't done anything for my birthday in the past nearly 8 years. I'm usually working. Well, this year, my sister-in-law invited me over on my birthday and said she was going to have a barbecue birthday party thing for me or whatnot. It was not even remotely what I wanted to do on my birthday, but I felt like I couldn't say no because she was hosting it and claimed it was for me, yada yada. Well, when my husband and I arrived, family members of his that not only have I never met, but he hadn't seen in years were there. A couple uncles and their wives, as well as other family members that I had met and I do get along with. My husband was super excited to see all these people that he hadn't seen in years, and at first everything was great, despite me being really overwhelmed. However, I did take into notice that not one single person said happy birthday to me, including my sister-in-law, and she had a banner along her door that said Happy Father's Day. By about an hour and a half in, and after my sister-in-law begged me to help her host this massive barbecue and help her cook everything, enough to feed 30 people, I was completely over it. I sat in a lawn chair outside and started browsing my phone. One of the uncles and my sister-in-law sit down near me, and he goes, "Thanks for having us for Father's Day. This is nice." My sister-in-law then turns to me and says,
OP, happy birthday.
I just said thanks and kept scrolling my phone. The uncle goes, "Oh, happy birthday. You don't look like you're having much fun." So I said, "I'm not. I was told this was a birthday party for me, not a Father's Day celebration, and so far I've been hosting instead of enjoying anything when I could have been out having a fun day for myself." He goes quiet and looks at my sister-in-law before saying, "You told us this was for Father's Day." She turns beet red and says I shouldn't be souring the mood over something trivial and that the family is never able to get together like this, so she just combined the two events. So I get up and say, "Yeah, well that would have worked if you had told people that you were combining events, not just celebrating Father's Day, because no one here is aware that I even exist." I then get in my car and leave. My husband is upset because he said that I didn't have to make a big deal out of it because the relatives he hasn't seen in years now think I'm a drama queen, and he had to overly explain that I was just disappointed and it wasn't a conversation that he should have had to have. Am I the jerk? The car sales business is hard. Just give in and leave. This story is about my previous job at a dealer group, which I actually like pretty well. I wanted in at a particular brand and settled on working at a different store for 6 months and bugging the GM for a position at that one store I wanted to work at. The GM is a great guy and could see that I very much wanted to transfer over there and help me interview with upper management there, even though the two sales managers weren't really interested in a green pea, someone new to sales. They gave in after me persisting and gave me a sales position reluctantly. In my first week there, the older manager pulled me to his office, kicked his feet up, and said something along the lines of this: "Look, man, when you inevitably give up on this job, just don't bother showing up. You know how many green peas actually make it? None. Sales is a dying breed, and you don't seem to have enough of an edge to take it. You're too nice to be here. So do us a favor and just get out of here. Nobody gives notice in the car business." I took that to heart. My first month, I hit commission, and everybody was blown away. After over 2 years of fighting their top seasoned veteran for first place and winning a few times, and making an absolute ton of money, my wife and I found out we were having a baby. As much as I love the job itself, having fun with my preferred brand in the process, gaining some loyal families and referrals, it was time to step away from the super high-stress job and focus on my family. It was a great experience, but always hindered by the sales managers trying to make me miserable. Some days I'd be laughing and chatting it up with my prospects and having a good time. They'd go out of their way to either mess with my deals or just upset me. Other coworkers told me that they frequently heard those managers complaining that I was too happy doing the work I was. As we got the news of our upcoming little one, I found out as well that the managers had been taking away bonuses I'd earned fair and square, called spiffs, from me for months during lockdown. It was definitely time to take the money and leave. At this point, I'd become the store's manufacturer-certified electric vehicle specialist and had the entire store's pre-order program running by myself. I was the only one certified to do it, and managers didn't know anything about the real process. January 1st, 2022 hits. I walk in 3 hours late for my shift, not wearing my normal business casual. I was never late more than a minute or two without letting them know, so they just assumed I was there, I suppose, and never went to check. Manager looks me up and down, looks at the clock, looks at me again, looks at the clock, and mumbles, "You're not dressed for work." "Yeah, because I don't work here anymore." Bewildered, he repeatedly asked me what I meant by that. I just told him I quit. Thanks for doing me out of my hard-earned bonuses for a year and for trying to do me out of my happiness.
"But you can't quit like this. It's not like you to do that. Where's our notice? We only have a couple of guys left. We can't cover your shifts or your pre-orders."
Well, you see, I'm just doing exactly what I was told. Have a nice year without me. Am I the jerk for overstepping my boundaries with my husband when it comes to my stepdaughter? I'm 36, female, and my husband is 40, male. I have 2 kids from a previous relationship, and he has 3 kids from a previous marriage. We share a year-old daughter. My husband's previous wife passed over 8 years ago. Last Christmas, his kids asked me to adopt them. I was all for it, but I wanted to see what his daughter, who's 15, thought about it since she's had a tough year. She was very close to her mother and till this day still struggles. The kids are in routine therapy, so I just wanted to know how she would feel about it, given the last few months she's really been in a bad headspace. Coming from a daddy's girl who also lost her father at a young age, sometimes we're not good at accepting change, even when we say we are. Though she said she was still on board, I wanted to ask her one-on-one. She expressed to me that she had a change of heart. She felt as if she was replacing her mother. It hurt, but I understood and explained to her that I was in no way trying to replace her mother. I explained to my husband that I think we should wait on the adoption, or I should just adopt the boys. He wanted to know why, and I explained to him the talk that she and I had. He said fine. I came home, and my stepdaughter was in her room all upset. All the kids were more than quiet, and I wanted to know why, because our home is rarely quiet, especially with 6 kids in the house. I'm used to coming home to a noisy house. I found my sons down in the basement playing on their games and asked why everyone was so quiet. He said that my husband and stepdaughter had a big fight about me adopting them. I immediately got upset. I confronted my husband and asked him why did he confront her. He said because she lied and changed her mind, that she needs to accept that her mother is gone. I lost it on him. I told him he wouldn't understand because he's never been through this, that she feels lost. She may even be depressed. This would be something new for her. I told him she would never get over this loss. I was furious he even responded that way. He said he didn't mean it that way, but I told him the damage was done, that he should be comforting her instead of being confrontational. He told me I was crossing boundaries, telling him how to deal with his kid. I told him, our kid. I begged and pleaded with my stepdaughter until she opened the door. I told her we didn't have to talk and that I just wanted to be near her, and I apologized for her father's behavior. She cried a little, and there were lots of hugs, and we talked about it. Though she and I are good, she still hasn't spoken to my husband in days, and neither have I. Now his family is taking his side. My husband is a Marine and can be harsh in his communicative delivery, which is no exception. I've had to explain to him that we're not his soldiers, but his family. Not the jerk. As a step-parent, you did everything right, going above and beyond. Your husband, on the other hand, messed everything up by confronting his daughter, whom you had already come to an understanding with. This will take a long time to fix. OP. My husband ran and told his family even about me hanging pictures of his late wife up, but they can buzz off because they have no say in our household. I would have added the conversation I had with his mother and sisters, but I was limited on what I could write. His mother felt that I was being disrespectful and not backing my husband, stating I basically gave my stepdaughter the authority of an adult, which is BS. I explained to her that I was my stepdaughter growing up, only I'd lost my father. There's nothing worse in the world than your feelings to be disregarded and not heard. I went through this with my own mother. I went through therapy and all. I told her my stepdaughter has every right to feel the way she does. Her feelings are valid. She told me that it wouldn't be long until my kids were running the household if I thought like that. I told her my kids' feelings will always come first, and it doesn't matter what she or anyone else has to say. His sisters call and give their input as well. Felt that no kid should be given that kind of a choice. That she should just obey whatever is being said by the parent. Wrong on so many levels. I don't feel that way. My mother had that same mentality, and it nearly destroyed me after my father passed. I asked them, are they aware that their niece lost her mother, that she's struggling daily, mentally and emotionally? They said that it's part of the process, and in time she'll be okay. To stop bending to her feelings, that I'm spoiling her. What? I kindly hung up and blocked them. May I add that my husband comes from a military household. His father, brothers, and one of his sisters are all military people, and they literally make me sick at how dismissive they are of my stepdaughter's feelings, which is one of the reasons now that my kids don't care to visit them. You want me to lie to prevent the guy who slipped on the ice from getting his claim? No. So I currently work in a petrol station. I came full circle when I left that job to try for something else and other reasons, but in the end did not work out and landed a job at another petrol station. This story is about the previous one I worked at, which is part of a supermarket during the winter. I arrive at work at 5:45 a.m. just as I walk across the forecourt, and next thing I'm like Bambi while trying not to fall down. Whilst doing this alongside of our duty manager, I said to him, "Hey, can you request the gritters, who we just passed gritting the main store car park, to maybe give us some love over here too? This could be dangerous for cars coming and going, but in the meantime, I'll just warn cars to drive slow and careful until the gritters come around." He says that's a good call and he'll do that. Well, of course, he didn't. So here's what happened next. After a good hour of standing outside in the cold, warning cars to drive slow and careful, I had to come back inside from the cold, plus to help my coworker hold the fort down while she went to the bathroom. While it was quiet, I got on my phone to the duty manager to ask him why he has not sent gritters, but of course, no one answers the phone. Then I noticed a customer making his way in while shouting, "Are you okay, mate?" I look out the window and I see a man mounted on his motorcycle fueling up, giving a thumbs up, and I thought, oh man, here we go. I asked the customer what happened, and he tells me how he rode his bike over the ice and came off his bike. Of course, this happened so fast, and I was distracted calling the manager, so I didn't even see the man fall. But I thought CCTV caught this. So the guy who came off his bike enters, and there I am apologizing profusely. Me, "I just heard you fell off your bike. Are you okay?" Biker, "Just scraped my knee a little, and my elbow really hurts, but I'll be fine." Me, "Are you sure? Look, just come into the back with me. I'll get first aid to check you over, and coffee is on me." Biker, "Hey, relax. I'm not going to make a claim. All is fine." Me, "Okay, I'm really sorry this has happened to you, and it's part of my job to make sure you're okay." Biker, "I'm okay, and don't worry about the coffee." So the biker leaves, but bear in mind, he wasn't really wearing biker protection gear. In the end, we found bags of salt in some storage, and we took it upon ourselves to grit the forecourt ourselves, considering this was not our job to do so. A week later, my boss calls me on my day off to tell me there's a statement form I needed to fill out when I came into work next. I straight up ask, "This is about the guy who came off of his bike, isn't it?" She says, "Yeah, he's making a claim." I rolled my eyes and laughed and told my boss how the guy told me he wasn't going to make a claim, but of course I didn't blame him. I head into work the next day and write a full statement of what happened, what I saw. Well, I didn't see him fall, but footage showed he did indeed fall, and also wrote the exact conversation we had and left it at that and just got on with the day. I come home, and later that night my boss calls me to ask me a very important question regarding if this guy will get his claim or not. And the question was, the morning the guy fell off his bike, did you notice that there was ice before he arrived? I straight up said, yes, I noticed there was ice. I noticed it when I walked over it and almost slipped and fell myself. There was a pause. Then I was asked, are you sure? You need to answer this honestly. And I said, of course I'm sure, and I'm being honest. Did my coworker lie and say no? And if I'm honest here, I don't really care if the biker gets his claim or not. I requested a gritter that morning and no one turned up. I even called diem to not ask, but tell him we needed a gritter. And I know that what happened isn't personally my fault, as I tried as far as my duties are to prevent accidents such as this from happening. The boss cuts me off and says, your answer here is very important, emphasizing the words your answer and important. You're saying you did not notice ice? Then I said, I'm not going to lie to possibly prevent a guy to win some I hurt myself money. That's my answer and I'm sticking with it. Good night. I hung up. Don't know if that guy got his claim or not, but all this would have been prevented if someone did their job right. Am I the jerk for not telling my family that I have a kid? My wife, who's 35, and I, 36 male, live across the country from my family, and we only visit for weddings, funerals, and other big family-related events. Both my wife and I are deaf. I've never been close with anyone in my family. My grandparents, cousins, aunts, uncles, brother, and father, single dad, because they never bothered to look past this. Growing up, they only did the bare minimum. Fed me, clothed me, made small talk, but they never actually tried to get to know me or do anything beyond that. They didn't even learn sign language for me. I can talk and read lips, but I'm often left out of their conversations. They never bothered to get to know my wife either. They think that we're both stupid and incapable of anything just because we can't hear. We're in our 30s, and they still treat us like kids. We hate it, especially my wife, who has purposefully not visited them since 2017. I have a successful career, and so does my wife, and we've been completely on our own since college. We have a healthy bank account. We travel a lot, and we're ready to buy a nice house, but we're waiting for the housing market to cool down. Despite all that, my family thinks that my wife's family takes care of us, i.e. helps out financially, manages our finances, and walks us through everyday tasks like buying groceries or paying bills. They just won't believe that we're intelligent and perfectly capable people who have done well for ourselves all on our own. My older brother is not deaf, and he's very close with my whole family. He doesn't have his life together. He works odd jobs, he has unstable relationships, and he regularly mooches off of people. Yet, my family still reveres him as a smart and capable person. He's a narcissist who has always treated me poorly, and my family enables his bad behavior. That's another reason I keep them at arm's length. I hope I've given enough context, so now on to the issue. My wife and I have a 2-year-old daughter. When my wife was pregnant, we decided that we didn't want any of my family in our daughter's life. It wouldn't be healthy for her to be around people who constantly disrespect her parents. And if she turned out deaf, which she didn't, they would treat her the same way they treat us. No one in my family keeps in touch with me anyway, so I didn't see a reason to volunteer any information to them. So I never told them about my daughter. We keep her off of social media, and I visited them only once since she was born, but she stayed home with my wife. My brother somehow found out about my daughter's existence a few weeks ago. The whole family is very upset. They blamed my wife because they think that she controls me, which is not true at all. They accused me of denying my daughter a family that could have helped raise her in many different ways. They may have a point. I'm starting to wonder if my wife and I are selfish for keeping our daughter from a big family full of cousins her age because we have our own hang-ups about them. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. They wouldn't be a family that could have helped raise her, but they would try to take over since she is hearing and you aren't, and therefore incapable from their perspective. Keep your distance, enjoy your life and your family, and keep protecting her from them. Am I the jerk for refusing to clean more than half of mine and my boyfriend's flat on my days off since we split the rent 50-50? I have refused to spend my days off cleaning our flat and insist we split the cleaning duties 50-50. He earns double what I earn, and we split everything 50-50. I work 3 days per week, and he works 5 days per week. He gets angry that I don't do our mutual washing and cleaning on my days off since I'm in the flat a lot more than him. My argument is that I'm not a housewife, and I should be able to enjoy my days off how I want to since we're both paying the same amount to live here. We have a mutual cleaning day, and we both tackle all of the jobs together. If it's really that bothersome, I've suggested we get a cleaner, but he thinks I'm being ridiculous since I'm home so much, and he still gets angry. Am I the jerk for refusing to do more than half of the cleaning? Edit. We work the same number of hours. My duty is longer, so I get more days off. Edit 2. I've never thought on the fact that we split expenses 50-50 when there's such a wage discrepancy. We split rent and bills. All costs 50-50. He doesn't pay extra towards anything at all. Everything is 50-50. Also, I don't want you to think he does nothing around the house. He does pull his weight. He just keeps getting angry with me for not doing his washing or doing more of the housework on my days off, and wants me to be doing more since I'm home more. Not the jerk. If he thinks you should do more than him with the same amount of free time, he's telling you that he thinks his time is more valuable than yours. Stick to your guns on this one. Not the jerk. If he wants it 50-50 when it benefits him, it's only fair that it's 50-50 when it benefits you. Now, if he wanted to use some of that extra income to pay for a housekeeper to take on his share of chores, that's an option. Or he could see what the going rate would be for that and cover that portion of your half of the rent. But otherwise, this is classic have your cake and eat it too BS. You can have a housewife or you can have a working partner, but you don't expect a working partner to be a housewife. Not the jerk. This isn't the 1950s. You split the bills 50-50, split the cleaning 50-50, or hire a cleaner. Am I the jerk for telling my sister the real reason nobody goes to her home? I, 17 female, have a sister who's 25 who's married to John and they have 4 kids together. Me and my sister have always had a pretty good relationship, but we got a bit distant when she moved into her home last year. Our family hosts a lot of dinners as the family is pretty close, and the dinners are almost always at my parents' home, but my sister tends to beg that we all have a celebration at her home. The last time we all had a dinner party at her home, the house was trashed, and there was a lingering smell of dirty diapers, and the kitchen was a mess, dirty dishes and molding food on the table. And even though everyone stayed quiet, I could see the discomfort on their faces, and everyone ended up leaving early while I stayed behind to help her clean up. It made me a bit sad, so the weekend after the dinner party, I went over to have a chat with my sister about life, and her 3-year-old threw their dirty diaper at me. I looked at my sister, waiting for a reaction, but she just laughed it off, so I just got up and left. This isn't the first time her house has been like this, and my mom goes over a lot on weekends to try to help out, and when asked why she can't clean up after her kids, she just rolls her eyes and says, "That's not my job. They can take care of themselves, and I'd rather not get my nails dirty with them, especially when I'd rather have a cup of wine and watch TV." Mind you, her kids are 3 to 7 years old and totally cannot take care of themselves, especially because their dad works long hours. Last Monday, the whole family started texting in our family group chat, asking if the next dinner party would be at my parents' home. My sister started begging that we have it at her home since she's been wanting to try out a new recipe. Everybody just kind of ignored her and agreed with having the dinner at my parents' home. My sister didn't take the rejection well and started spamming the group chat asking why nobody ever wants to come over and how this is unfair and she feels like we all don't like her. I simply replied to her message saying, maybe if you cleaned up after your kids and tried putting in the effort to clean your home instead of going to the club with your friends, we would come over. My sister then left the group chat and called me, losing it on me, asking, how dare I embarrass her in front of the family? I replied I only wanted the best for my nieces and nephews, and the way she treats them was not okay. She then told me to mind my business and hung up the phone. Now my parents are siding with her and saying every mom deserves a break and to be able to have fun with their friends. But at this rate, my sister is going out every night, leaving them alone until her husband gets home, and me or my mom are usually the ones having to go over and ensure that they're safe. Am I the jerk?
Karen wants to see my phone to make sure I wasn't taking her pics. I'm at the gym today and I'm walking towards an empty squat rack. 10 feet in front of and 1 foot to the right of my rack is another rack that a girl, Belinda, 20, is doing squats on. I went through my workout as normal. After every set, I check my phone for 5 to 20 seconds. I track every single set for every single lift in a spreadsheet to note how much I lifted and for how many reps. Sometimes I need to remind myself what I did last week to make sure I'm progressing. Sometimes I'm just checking the time. Sometimes I'm changing the song on my Spotify. Tonight, specifically, there was a very important basketball game being played, so I wanted to keep up with the score. So I used my phone a lot at the gym. I finished my third set when Belinda turns around and walks up to me with her phone up, yelling, "What are you doing?
Creep, stop taking pictures of me.
I'm caught completely off guard, but I explain that I'm just taking notes on what I'm lifting, that I'm not paying attention to her at all. She's being extra loud, so other people are looking at me. Plus, she's recording me, and she demands I go through my pictures and videos to show her what I was recording, and I delete the ones I took of her. I try to again explain I didn't record anything of her at all. She's yelling that if I have nothing to hide, I should have no problem showing her. So I insist on going to gym management. Once at the front, we both explain our stories. She's still recording. The normal gym attendee asks if I'm willing to show her, a neutral third party, my pictures and videos. She also says if I have nothing to hide, it's not a big deal and we can squash it right now. I refuse. I have my own private pictures in there, plus those of my girlfriend. I'm not gonna let anyone force me to show them some BS. I do show her my spreadsheet, which shows it's been revised over 15 times in the last 50 minutes, so that proves what I was using my phone for. That was received well, but they still expected me to prove my innocence. I told them they need to review the cameras. Apparently, only the manager has access to them, so I was told he'd call me before the end of the night, in about an hour. My girlfriend tells me I should have just let them look at my phone because she doesn't mind and it would have cleared this all up, but I mind. I get that someone wouldn't want someone taking pics of them, but violating my privacy to prove I wasn't taking pics of you crosses a line for me. Edit. Just talk to the manager. He checked the footage. He couldn't see what was on my screen in the footage, but he said it looks like I had my phone pointed towards the ground right in front of me the whole time. In his opinion, not high enough to even take a pic of her, and never angled in her direction. Apparently, I was gonna get banned from the gym if the cameras didn't absolve me. And also, I'm not the first person that has been accused by Brenda, but she legit had a creeper before.
Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.